Summary.
My aunt rushed through my bedroom door. Get up, Althea. We have to go, now. I asked Aunt Dedra what's happening. She stopped and said, your father is gone, child. I will explain more once we are out of here. But we must go. Quickly, grab the bags I packed yesterday and get in the car. Patrol changes shift in 20 minutes and we have to cross the northern border at the right time. We hurried to the car and I watched out the window as the only home I have ever known faded in the distance.
Chapter 1: Escape.
I woke from a restless sleep to see we were still driving. I looked at Aunt Dedra and asked, "Where are we?" She said, "East of Portland." I just shrugged. I have no clue where that is. I mean, I know it's in Oregon, and there's one in Maine. But the furthest I had driven was to school and back. "Where are we going?" I asked her. "Your grandmother owned a shop in Takota, Washington. Your mom and I were the only ones who knew about it. Now you and I are." She whispers, "What kind of shop?" I asked her. "And why did we have to sneak away?" She sighed. "You know why, Althea. Your father is dead. Your step-brother murdered him and took the Alpha title, and he won't stop there. You would have been next." I said, "What? Why would Michael kill me?" She started to cry. She said, "You are rightfully the next Alpha. Your father's power will only pass to you when you turn 18. Michael knows it and wants you dead to keep that from happening. We will be fine. I have already emailed Alpha Roman of Sioux River Pack to ask asylum there. Luckily, your grandmother was well loved by Pack and townspeople alike, so that should help open some doors for us. It will be an adventure for us, and a good way for you to build your magic and perfect your potions." The shop was a magic shop. Grandma specialized in potions and tonics, healing herbs, things of that nature. We will arrange for Auburn to run as soon as we stop. But you must stay out of sight of people, Althea. You are the last red wolf and touched by the moon. All your powers will awaken on your 18th birthday, and we must train you so you are prepared. I promised your father, honey, and all we have left is each other. I love you. You know that, right, Munchkin? I looked at her and said, "I love you, Aunt D," and laid my seat back as I put my headphones in to try and calm my mind. My name is Althea Dawson. My mom died 4 years ago when we were attacked by rogue wolves hired to target the Luna of our pack. No one ever knew who sent them, or why. My father fell apart, and I moved to my Aunt Dee's cottage because my father knew I needed to learn and practice my craft. I'm 17. My birthday is in 2 months. I shifted into my wolf Auburn when I was 14, and my dad said she must have come early to help heal my broken heart. My mom was my best friend. I lost my heart that day. My mother died, but my dad was just as gone. There's not much to me. I'm only 5 feet tall with green eyes and waist-length curly and unruly red hair. I am a witch-wolf hybrid, and my wolf is the last known red wolf since my father is dead. My father took a second chance mate, a chosen, 2 years ago. Her name is Dorothy, and she is a truly nasty person. She came into the marriage with 2 children, both older than me. Her daughter Lisa isn't bad, but I seldom saw her. She mated the Gamma from Luna Heart Pack last year. But her son Michael, I don't like him. He is arrogant and crass, so cruel. He's evil incarnate, and I was always a little afraid to be alone with him. Our pack, the Golden Moon, has been led by the Gold family for 5 generations, and now it isn't. I pray the moon goddess protects my people until I can set things to rights. I hear my father's voice. Looking around, I seem to be standing in a room of white. I see a man walking towards me and realize it's my dad. I run at him and wrap my arms around him. I breathe him in, always loving his scent of brandy and leather. It always reminds me of the years spent in his office, just hanging out with him. He sits down holding me in his lap and says, "I don't have much time. I'm sorry I left you like I did. It was my time, and now I can be with your mom. The time of Golden Moon is done." As we speak, that upstart is changing the name. But that's not why I am here. This is a talk we would have had on your 18th birthday. But, well, here we are. You are a powerful witch, more powerful than you know, and all your powers will awaken. But more than that, you are a powerful wolf. You must always, always control Auburn. She's a redhead with a fiery temper, so much like her human counterpart. He winks at me. But you must never let her go into a rage. She is strong, so strong, and if she lost herself to blind rage, she could annihilate an entire pack. It is the primary reason I made sure you nurtured your relationship with her. She loves you as deeply as you love her. She's my best friend, I whispered. I know, Munchkin, I know. Our wolves are our goddess-given assurance we are never alone. You will meet your mate soon. I need you to keep an open mind and heart. He has had a rough go of it and isn't sure he wants a mate. That will change. But you need patience. I looked at my dad and deadpanned. Well, go figure. I always wanted my mate. Wanted the love you and Mama have. And I get an indecisive crotch who doesn't want me. Yep, life right on track. He chuckles and said, stop being dramatic. Now, listen and learn all that your Aunt Dedra teaches you. Do not allow your powers to overwhelm you. Meditate daily. And when your temper does get away from you again, and it will, my little red-headed firecracker, you take that anger and turn it to something constructive. Your mother and I will be very disappointed if you burn the world down. He smirks. You will face many things in the next few years, some bad, and you must be ready. You are a born leader, and when the time comes, I have no doubt you will take up the mantle and do me proud. You will not only absorb your mother's powers on your birthday, but my alpha mantle will settle into your heart. I said, great, a double whammy, and he laughs. Always so dramatic, Munchkin. I must go now, but your mom and I will see you on your birthday, at least one more time. Go with Goddess, my most precious girl. Remember, you are loved more than you know, and always let your light shine. I hear my aunt calling my name, and I pop up and look around. I must look a fright because Aunt Dee said, what is it? What's wrong? I fell into her arms and sobbed like my heart would come out of my chest. She just wrapped me in her arms and held on tight. When I felt more in control, I told her about my talk with my dad, how I would get to see both my parents on my birthday, possibly for the last time. And she said he was right in telling me they had had a plan in place since my mom died, because it will make training me easier if I am doing it to make them proud. Then she said, and no, you cannot turn your mate into a slug just because he has issues. I laughed and said, stay out of my head. Then I realized we were sitting outside a diner, and my stomach growled. She laughed and said, let's eat. We walked into the diner and sat. I ordered a chocolate milkshake with a cheeseburger and fries. I love fries. Fries should be served with every meal. Aunt Dee ordered coffee and an egg white omelet. Yuck. After our food arrived, Aunt Dee said you can take over driving now. We are heading north and about 4 hours out. Just stay on the interstate until you see the exit sign for Takoda and wake me. I will direct you to the shop. I received an email back from Alpha Roman accepting our asylum request. You will have to join his pack, and I will swear fealty. We have to be in his office at 9 in the morning. As we stepped from the diner, she said, renounce the pack now. I don't want Michael to feel the bond snap close to Sioux River pack. So I said, I, Althea Gold, renounce my oath and fealty to the Golden Moon pack of Sierra Matter. And I felt the breath leave my chest and hit my knees. At Golden Moon, Michael felt the snap of the bond and screamed at his beta, find that little bitch and bring her to me. Now.
Chapter 2, New Pack.
As I turned off the interstate, I woke my aunt. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and said, oh, I'm getting excited. I haven't been back here since I was a teenager. I just smiled at her. As she directed where to go, she said, stop at that Walmart and let's grab some things. We each grabbed a cart, and she just started throwing things in. Bedding, linens, toiletries. She grabbed me some shorts and tops and some sleep sets. She got herself a few dresses and a pair of OMG, these sandals are so cute sandals. Then we headed to get some food and drinks, although I am not sure why we needed 8 bottles of wine at once. We pulled up and stopped in front of an adorable 2-story house that looked straight out of an enchanted forest. Vining honeysuckle covered the white picket fence and flower beds surrounded the 5 trees in the front yard. The huge front porch had a swinging egg chair in the corner by a huge window, and opposite that was a 2-seater glider. The front door was painted a navy blue with white trim, while the entire house was painted a robin's egg blue with white shutters. I fell in love with it immediately. I asked Aunt Dee if she grew up here, because I had suddenly been hit with envy. I would have loved living my life in this little town. She simply nodded. We unloaded the car and Aunt Dee turned on some music. She walked out of the kitchen with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. She said we have to dust everything and prepare our rooms, so we might as well enjoy it. She danced around cleaning and airing out the bedrooms. Bruno Mars, Just the Way You Are, came on the radio, and she ran over to me, grabbing my hands and singing at the top of her lungs, while she spun me in a makeshift dance that had me laughing. These past 4 years, we have gotten so close. She's more like an older sister than my aunt, and she is my best friend. I thank Goddess every day for blessing me with her. She turned back to the kitchen when the song ended, and I said, Aunt Dee, I love you. Thank you for always rescuing me. She reached out and hugged me and said, my sweet baby girl. We rescued each other, and we will keep doing it. Every day. See why I love this woman? I was upstairs in my room, unpacking everything and making my bed with the new sheets and comforter we bought. I laid all my art supplies out on a table that was set directly under a dormer window that would let in perfect light for painting. As I finished setting my easel in the corner, I saw Aunt Dee out of the side of my eye leaning against the door frame. In a quiet voice, she said this was your mom's room. She would sit for hours at that table and draw. She drew the most beautiful things you can imagine. I love that you have taken that after her. Well, that, and that hair. She spun out the door laughing and shouted pizza rolls for dinner. Let's eat. So I followed her into the kitchen, not bothering to tell her pizza rolls are nothing more than a snack. I usually do the cooking because, let's face it, she's a disaster in the kitchen. And my mom and I took culinary classes as a mommy and me adventure. I learned more than my mom, but at least she stopped burning water. We were eating and laughing when we heard a thump at the front of the house. I jumped up and jerked the door open and saw 3 teenage boys on the sidewalk. The tallest of the 3 said, moving in. I said, yeah, did you throw something at the house? He said, Tommy did. This house was owned by a witch, and it's haunted. I laughed and said, good to know. I'll keep an eye out, and shut the door. I walked back in the kitchen still laughing, and Aunt Dee asked what happened. So I told her about the boys, and she rolled her eyes. She said some prejudices will always exist. It's how we handle it that matters. I told her not to worry. She and my mom taught me to be thick-skinned. I cannot and will not tolerate a bully. I really am thick-skinned enough to take most any insult. I am secure in my own skin and find it quite funny when mean girls try to best me. I actually thrive on the confrontation. We sat in the living room just talking. I asked her about maybe getting my hair done tomorrow, and she said if there's time. We have to be at the pack house by 9. Then she wants to get me registered to start school Monday. We have to go by the shop to see about getting it ready to reopen. And she wants to go by the DMV for new driver's licenses. I still think we can get my hair done. I want it to be nice for school. But I guess we have the weekend, so it's all good. I was getting tired, and it was nearing midnight, so I headed up to bed. I went to the bathroom and brushed my teeth and changed onto a silk commie and sleep shorts. As I reached up to close my window, I heard a long, sad howl, and for some reason, my heart pulled me to the sound. I thought that was such a broken sound, almost the cry of a wolf mourning its mate. I climbed under the covers and was asleep in seconds. I opened my eyes to the morning sun streaming a beam across my floor. There's always something so special about each new day. I hopped out of bed and straight to a warm shower. I got out and toweled off. I slipped on a pair of light blue brushed denim jeans and a bright green commie. Slipping on my boots and grabbing my camo jacket, I bounced downstairs and got coffee started, while I pulled out breakfast fixings. I was dancing around to Taylor Swift with my headphones in and Aunt Dee pinched my ass. I jumped 3 feet and squealed, while she fell over laughing. There are some things I don't handle well. Being snuck up on is one of them. Pinching my ass is another. But I said, "Food's ready, and we better get a move on. It's already 8. Do you know where the pack house is?" She said nope. But she has GPS and an address. We made it to the pack house in fairly good time and still had 20 minutes before our appointment. A really cute guy about my age led us to a bench seat outside double doors. The door on the left had a bronze plaque that read, Alpha Roman Baron. We sat down to wait, and waited, and waited. And finally, 45 minutes later, the door opened, and a tall guy well over 6 feet with brown eyes and hair said, "Miss Gold?" I said yes, and he said, "Alpha will see you now." And I'm thinking he should take a course in time management, but let's just get this over with. I stepped through the double doors and smelled the most delicious scent of petrichor and winter pine. My knees went weak. I looked up into silver eyes set in a beautiful face, seemingly carved in stone. His hair was pulled into a SXY as Hal topknot, and he had to be at least 6'5". Magnificent male, and he is. My mate, I uttered, "Fuck my life," under my breath, and Aunt Dee pinched my ass and I jumped and squealed. I said, "Will you stop that?" And she just shrugged and gave me a cheeky grin. The alpha cleared his throat and said, "Well then, let's get started. Tell me why you have sought asylum." And Aunt Dee started to tell him. He barked, "Not you, her." I sat up and narrowed my eyes at him. And I said, "With all due respect, Alpha, I am underage and Dedra is my legal guardian." The request for asylum was at her behest, and is her story to tell. I was fuming. He sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. He just glared at me for several moments, then said, "Very well, you may begin," looking at my aunt.
Chapter 3, Exactly What I Don't Need. Roman's POV.
I sit here behind my desk, cursing the moon goddess. This is exactly what I had hoped to avoid, at least for another 10 years. My mate, my fucking mate, just up and waltzed into my office from some pack in Nevada, and I had stupidly approved asylum without proper vetting because Ambrose, that stupid wolf, wouldn't shut up about it. He just had to have this girl join our pack, had to. He threatened to lick his balls every day for a year if I didn't agree. And while that may be a perfectly normal canine activity, I had no desire to taste wolf balls when I shifted back every day. Now I sit and glance over at my mate every few seconds, while trying to concentrate on what her aunt is saying. I have been alpha for exactly 2 years and 2 days. My father was killed, ambushed by rogues, on his way home from an alpha conference in Wyoming 2 years ago. I was 16 and felt the alpha mantle settle on my shoulders at the same time I felt his bond snap. I had to postpone my senior year until this year while I worked with my advisors to get the pack acclimated to the shift in power. We are finally on the right path and flourishing once again. My parents were true mates, a perfect couple so deeply in love that when she died, my father almost went with her. If he hadn't had to raise me, I'm sure he would have. I was 14. I don't want a mate. I don't want that all-encompassing emotion that comes with it. True love is a killer. I don't need that encumbrance. I will get her sworn in, then I will forget about her. I will stay away from her while I decide how to handle this. Easy peasy. I realized I had been so stuck in my head that the only thing I took away from the aunt's report is the fact their situation had become tenuous, at best, and my mate's life was in danger. Great. I plan on avoiding her like the plague, and Ambrose is growling in my head at a potential threat to her life. I looked up and said to the aunt, "Dee or something? Are you prepared to swear allegiance to Sioux River Pack?" She said certainly. So I rose from my chair and asked her to stand. I took our pack holy writ, which has been blessed by our goddess, and had her place her left hand on it while raising her right. I said, "Repeat after me. I say your name. Do solemnly swear to uphold and obey the laws and order of my Alpha and pledge my fealty to Sioux River Pack." She said, "I, Dedra Callum, do solemnly swear to uphold and obey the laws and order of my Alpha and pledge my fealty to Sioux River Pack." And the sigil on the front of the book glowed gold. I said, "The moon goddess approves." I watched my mate stand up, and I took a ceremonial dagger from atop the mantle and walked over to her. I said, "Same thing, only a little different. What's your name?" She said, "Althea Gold." I said, "Do you swear to uphold and obey the laws and order of your Alpha and pledge dedication and fealty to the Sioux River Pack?" She said, "I do so solemnly swear." And with that, I made a small slice in both our hands with a dagger and clasped my hand over hers. Both our hands glowed gold for a few seconds, and I said, "The goddess accepts," and pulled my hand back a little more sharply than I intended. Those sparks were fuking with my head. Not good, not good at all. I sat back down and glanced up. I said, "That will be all. You are dismissed." Althea shot me a quick glance and narrowed her eyes. I realized that came out harsher than I had intended and stood up to offer some kind of apology or something. I'm not sure what, but she spun on her heel and practically ran from the office, her aunt following. I mind-linked my beta, Caleb, to get in my office immediately. He walked in 2 minutes later, munching on a bag of pretzels, trying to see if he could whistle around the crumbs in his mouth. "Dumbass," I said, "I need any and everything you can find on Althea Gold from Golden Moon in Nevada." I kind of zoned out while the aunt was telling their story. He looks at me and asked, "The witch and the hybrid?" I nodded. Caleb said, "Give him a bit," and started a search on his tablet. He said, "That little hybrid is a hot ticket. I wouldn't mind taking her around the block a few times," and laughed. I slammed my fist on my desk and said, "She is my mate." Caleb's eyes got huge, and he said, "Fuck, bro. What are you gonna do? I know you don't want her, but at least think about it before you reject her." I said, "I'm not rejecting her. I just don't want her right now, if ever. I don't know. I will avoid her." Caleb said, "What about Sydney? She's not going to be happy when she finds out. She's already picking out the china pattern for her lunar ceremony." And then he laughed hard and said, "Fuck, man. Your life just got real complicated." I said, "Fuck you, and get me that report. I'm going for a run."
Chapter 4, Frustration and Cheesecake. Althea's POV.
My aunt and I walked out of the pack house, and I slammed myself into the car. Aunt D started the car and said, "You want to talk about it?" I said, "Just drive." We had driven about 15 minutes when I said, "He's my mate, Aunt D, my mate." And he sat there acting like I was nothing, like it meant nothing. Dad said he would be difficult. He didn't say impossible. How I am supposed to deal with his broody as and act like it's okay. In a deep voice I said, "That will be all. You are dismissed." Arrogant asshole. Fucking nubjob acting like his shit don't stink. How dare he? How dare he act like I'm not good enough? Okay, then. Okay. Good for the goose, good for the gander shit right there. See how he feels being ignored. See how he likes not existing in my world? Asshole. She says, "Are you done? Do you feel better?" "Because I have an idea." I said, "Yep, all done." She said, "Good, because you need cheesecake," and stopped in front of a cute little diner. We walked in and heard Dedra Callum. Dee looked up and said, "Sally." And then it was play catch up on 15 years of life. And who's doing who and what's going on? I barely listened after the introduction because I was focused on cheesecake. Don't get between a girl and her cheesecake. Somebody gonna lose a finger. We finally leave the diner with Dee making plans for Sally to come to dinner tomorrow and headed to get my hair done because apparently cheesecake isn't enough to fix my bad mood. Know what would fix my bad mood? A bus. A bus dropped right on the head of one Mr. Giz Alpha Roman Baron. My SXY as fuck mate who wishes I didn't exist. Og. Dee looked over at me and laughed. She said, "Went deep into your own head again, didn't ya?" I said, "Yep." I'm sitting here in the salon chair while the beautician snipped and thinned and gelled my frizziest hair, and when she was done, I was in awe. My hair was straightened and hung to my waist. Smooth, sleek, and shiny, and I looked beautiful. I was so happy I hugged her. She giggled and handed me hair products to maintain frizz and tame my unruly curls, and now I really am happy. Dee wrapped her arm around me and said, "Let's head over to school." We were walking in at the last bell of the day, and I was hearing comments flying from every direction. "Ooh, fresh meat," I called dibs, and all-time favorites. "She better keep her hands off my man. Goddess Iowa, look at that red hair. Oh yeah, school is the same all over." We got to the office and I was registered. We walked around so I could see where all my classes are. This being in advanced courses sucks balls, but it will help if I go to college. I found my locker and put my books inside, and we headed out to go to the shop. I love this place. I did a slow spin in the middle of the store, looking at the shelves with books as old as time. Jars and jugs filled with herbs and oils. I can feel the old magic seeping into my soul. I will be spending all my afternoons here with Aunt Dee. I can learn so much. Aunt Dee starts cleaning up inside, and I walked outside to pull the boards off the windows outside. I was finishing up when 3 girls walked up the sidewalk towards me. The one who seemed to be the leader said, "Yo, new girl, what are you doing?" I rolled my eyes. "Yay, mean girl alert, and I'm on her radar," I said, as patiently as possible, because to anyone with more than 4 brain cells can see what I'm doing. "I am removing the boards from these windows," fake Barbie says. "Why?" "Again, 4 brain cells," I said, "so my aunt can look outside and people can see in." She sneers, "Your aunt? Where's your mom?" I said, "Not here," and walked back inside. They all followed. She looks at my Aunt Dee and curls her lip, says, "You're a witch?" My aunt never loses her shit. She smiles and says, "Yes, I am. We just moved back to town so I can reopen my mother's shop." Fake Barbie huffs and snorts. She snorts, then says, "We don't like your kind here." I said, "Our kind?" She said, "Yeah, witches. They can't be trusted and are evil." I said, "Good to know. Now leave. We aren't open to the public, and in essence, you are trespassing." She turned and stormed out. Aunt Dee said, "Bully?" I said, "Yep. I attract mean girls like stink on shit." And we laughed. I asked if she is keeping the name the same, but she said she'd rather have her own name to build on. So we brainstormed for about an hour, and she decided on Dedra's Apothecary. I set about scraping the old name off the front windows to paint the new name while Dee cleaned everything to a fine sheen. Then she sat and ordered everything she needed for potions and tonics. I ordered us pizza, and she called to get the power on, and they came right out, which surprised me. Guess they aren't real busy around here. After pizza, I finished the sign and Aunt Dee clapped her hands and did a little dance for joy at how it turned out. She said I had magic hands, and we both laughed. Because, well, witches. So yeah, we were carrying boxes out of the storeroom to go through to see what she can use when there was a ding at the door. I looked up to see the guy who let us into the Alpha's office and asked him if he was lost. He smiled a little and said, "No, I was in town and saw the cool new sign, so I thought I'd introduce myself." He stuck his hand out saying, "Caleb." I shook it and said, "Althea." I tilted my head and asked, "Beta?" He shrugged and said, "Yeah." I said, "Don't be embarrassed. It's a great position." Unless you are in the awkward position of pretending you don't know who your alpha's mate is and trying to act like it doesn't bother you that he is being a huge douchicano. He laughed loud and long. Then he said, "Let's start again. Hi, I'm Caleb. Are you new in town?" And my aunt laughed. She said, "Hello, Caleb. It's nice to meet a friendly face." He smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry about Roman. He has issues." I laughed and said, "Well, allow me to submit my unsubscription," and he laughed again. He said, "I like you, Althea. I think we're going to be fast friends." I said, "If you're allowed." And he laughed again, said, "Nice meeting you," and left. My aunt said, "Nice boy. And the friends you surround yourself with define who you really are." I said, "Yeah, we'll see."
Chapter 5. Last first day of school.
Althea's Pav. Our weekend was uneventful, for the most part. Dee's old friend canceled dinner on Saturday due to a sick kid. But the chicken Alfredo I had cooked didn't go to waste. Caleb stopped by with all the necessary paperwork my aunt needed to get the shop in her name and legal. So we asked him to stay for dinner, and he happily agreed. I found out his parents are still living, and he has a 17-year-old sister. Her name is Mariah, and she's one of fake Barbie's minions. I was told fake Barbie's name is Sydney, but I don't care. Then I found out she is dating my mate, and has been for 6 months. Good to know. I'm excited to be going to school today. I got up a half hour earlier than I normally would. I wanted my hair to look nice. I slipped on a super cute pair of black shorts and a half shirt that said, "Tell me a rule, and I will teach you 7 ways to break it." Yep, I'm in that kind of mood. I slipped on my black Converse and hopped the stairs 2 at a time. Walked in the kitchen and kissed Aunt Dee on the cheek. Grabbed my go-cup and filled it with caffeinated sweetness. A bagel, and I was twirling out the door with Aunt Dee's laugh following behind me. She yelled, "Wait for me. I don't want you walking." We chatted on the way and talked about getting me a car. But I told her I wanted a motorcycle, and she said we would talk. We pulled up to school and I hopped out saying I would see her at the shop after school. I entered the doors and walked in. I reached my locker and noticed Caleb's was right beside mine. He was there with 2 other guys, equally tall and equally gorgeous. He introduced them as Dylan and Brent. I pointed at Dylan and said, "Gamma?" He nodded, and I said to Brent, "Makes you Delta, huh?" He nodded and said, "Yup." I said, "Great. I would love to spar with you sometime. You know, so I don't get rusty," and he said, "Sure." Then I said to Dylan, "Sorry you got the short end of the stick since you guard Luna, and I will feel even sorrier if he chooses fake Barbie." We all laughed, and he said, "You have no idea." I said, "See ya later, guys," and walked into my math class. The teacher looked up at me and said, "Hi, new girl. Want to introduce yourself?" I said no, but I did it anyway. I sat down and got to work. That's pretty much how my advanced art class went too. I walked into 3rd period biology and noticed all eyes on me, including those of my mate. "Oh goody." Caleb waved to an empty seat beside him, and I sat down. He says, "How's your day going?" I said, "Good up to now," and he laughed. I heard a voice in my head and recognized it as Roman. He said, "What are you wearing?" I said, "Yua. Is this like an obscene phone call or something? You can see perfectly well what I'm wearing." He shot back, "Yes, and it is inappropriate. Too much skin." I laughed out loud, and I looked over at him, and his little Chippy sat beside him, eyeing her short skirt and half shirt unbuttoned way past her cleavage, looking like a slutty schoolgirl, and back at Roman, and rolled my eyes. The entire class I was in stitches. Caleb is really funny and Dylan is adorable. But when the bell rang, I was out of my seat and ran like a bat out of hell. I am starting to catch feelings. The fucking stupid bond is messing with me. And to see that jackass stand and take STD walking by the hand to walk out, I almost tripped. I entered the cafeteria and grabbed a tray. I put 2 chocolate milks and a tuna sandwich, ordered fries, and snagged an apple, turning to sit. I spied Barbie and her minions standing in front of a brown-haired girl at a table. She was sitting alone trying to read, and Barbie kept bouncing a book off the table. I said, "Here we go." I sauntered over and sat down across from the girl. She glanced up at me, and I gave her a genuine smile and said, "Hi, I'm Althea. I'm the new girl." Her eyes grew great big, and she stuttered out, "I'm Kathy," and dropped her eyes again. Barbie opened her mouth. I'm saying under my breath, "Please say something stupid. Please do it," and sure enough, oh look, our old table is now the loser's table. She and her minions tittered. I leaned back in my chair and looked her dead in the eyes. I said loudly, "Walk away, Barbie. I'm trying to get to know my new friend." I noticed Kathy had no food, so I unfolded a napkin and put half my fries on it. Opened the tuna fish and put half beside the fries. I slid it over to her and said, "I hope you aren't allergic to fish." She shook her head no. I set one of the chocolate milks in front of her, looked up at Barbie and said, "You're still here?" She said, "Why are you sitting with this reject? No one likes her. She's always dirty and she smells." I smiled, shaking my head. Just as I opened my mouth, I saw my mate walk in with his inner circle, but I said it anyway. "And your opinion matters. Why? Kathy is sitting here, minding her own business, and you seem to think by saying what you said to her and about her, like she's not even here, makes you look good, when in reality, it makes you look small and mean. Mean girls are the same the world over. Now, I have told you once, I will say it one more time because, apparently, you're too thick to comprehend it the first time. Walk the fuck away before I bounce your plastic nose off the fucking table," and took a bite of my sandwich. She sputtered and screamed, "When my boyfriend hears how you talk to me, you will be expelled." And I said, "He's standing right there." I indicated with my chin, and I said, "While you're at it, ask him why a member of his pack sits here with no food to eat when every pack I have ever heard of has an emergency fund for situations such as this. Now move." She stormed over to Roman and started whining, and I stopped listening. I leaned over, talking to Kathy in a low voice. I said, "If she talks to you again, you come find me. If she tries to hurt you, mind link me, I will find you. From now on, this is our table, and we are going to be best friends." Her lip trembles and a tear falls. She whispers, "Why?" I said, "Because I used to be you, and I hate bullies." The rest of the day was more of the same until gym. I always loved gym. By the time we had changed into our uniforms, which consisted of a t-shirt and a pair of basketball shorts, and gotten into the gymnasium, I realized Kathy was there standing off to the side, almost behind the bleachers. I walked over to her and took her hand and walked her over to sit down. Coach called out names, and we divided into 2 teams for dodgeball. I was happy Kathy was on my team. And Caleb, "Gonna be a good day, Tater?" I looked over at Barbie and noticed her t-shirt was tied high under her breasts, and her waistband of her shorts rolled down almost to her pissy. Seriously, I actually burst out laughing. The game was getting hot and heavy, and teammates were dropping like flies. I noticed Roman deflected any balls away from Barbie, and I also noticed that Barbie and her minions were targeting Kathy. I deflected the ball away from her every time. I had turned away from her for a second when I heard a sharp gasp from Kathy and looked at her on the floor holding her stomach. I lifted her shirt, and her whole stomach was beet red, and Auburn growled in my head. I said, "Who?" She whispered, "Sydney." Just then, I felt the wind shift to my back and stood and caught the ball, knowing who tried to hit me when my back was turned. I spun in a half circle and whizzed that ball back at her as hard as I could, and thwack. Oops. Plastic nose broken. I helped Kathy to her feet, walking past Roman and his little group, and looked into the face of a caterwauling Barbie, and said, "That's one. Careful how you use the next 2. After school, I walked Kathy to her house. It was a little run down, but it wasn't bad. I told her I would see her tomorrow and walked back towards my aunt's shop. Roman mind-linked me to be in his office at 6 with my legal guardian. Well, shit. I got to the shop and explained everything to Aunt D, and she laughed, said, let's clean up and head over there and goddess, help the fool that says something stupid. And I laughed, saying, and you wonder where I get it.
Chapter 6. Hoping for a second chance.
Walking into his office with his inner circle, he said, what have you found, Caleb? Caleb cleared his throat and began. Her father was the late Alpha Philip Gold of Gold Moon Pack. He was murdered the night before she arrived, so 5 days ago. The new Alpha is her stepbrother, also the killer of her father. He expected the mantle would fall to him, so unless she isn't 18 yet, the mantle is lost. Roman said she's not for 2 months. Caleb said, oh shit dude, she's Alpha. Her mother was a witch and her powers went to her only child. So double whammy, she is a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo and a 3rd degree in kickboxing. Sydney better walk quietly. Her mother was killed by rogues when Althea was 14. She split living with her father and her Aunt Dedra after the loss. She is smart, an accomplished artist, and proficient in both spells and potions. She's going to be a walking legend, bro. She loves chocolate and hates bullies. She recognized our ranks without hesitation and apologized to Dylan for drawing the short end of the stick, and then asked Brent to spar with her. Classic, that girl really is gold. As he laughed, Roman pinched his nose. It isn't going to be easy ignoring this girl. And now he has to discipline her? His life was looking up. Things have been so much better. And now it's going to shit. Fucking Bond. Then Roman said, look into Kathy and her family. I want to know why she can't afford to eat. That is unacceptable, and I got called out on it by my own fucking mate. Dylan and Brent said at the same time. She is our Luna? Roman says it does not leave this room. He said, I want you all to be here when Sydney and her parents get here, and especially when Althea and Dedra are here too. Dylan said, I'm sorry, bro. I know she's my sister, but she's just a really evil person. Kathy isn't her first victim, nor is she her only victim. She gets away with everything by saying she's Luna and throws her weight around in your name. She has no real friends and everyone is afraid of her, Roman said. Why didn't I know? You're my inner circle. You're supposed to have my back. And Caleb said, that is such bullshit. We thought you were happy with that viper. Would you have listened to us, believed us? Roman sat there realizing he's right. He wouldn't have heard them out. He apologized to them all. And then he said, be prepared. I am ending it with her after punishments are doled out. How much of a battle am I looking at? Caleb said, nuclear, and everyone laughed. Then Roman said, Caleb, how much of a problem are we going to have with Althea's stepbrother? Is he looking for her? Will he come for her? He's looking, for sure. He sent trackers out the night he felt her bond snap. But he doesn't know about Dedra. She lived in a cottage at the edge of the property and never ventured to the pack house. Wolves came to her cottage to be healed. Gold Moon Pack has a population of 900 with only about 200 warriors. But I don't know how many would fight with him. Not against their mantled Alpha. Caleb shakes his head. It's 7 minutes after 6, and Roman is looking at Sydney, wondering what he ever saw in her when a knock comes at his door. He said, come. Althea entered first wearing a sunflower-covered sundress with her hair in braids on each side with little flowers braided in, and absolutely no makeup and her freckles with white flats on her feet. Roman knew he had never and won't ever again seen anyone as breathtaking. He knows now that the bond is bigger than them both. He asked them to sit, and then asked, how is Kathy? Althea? Before she answered, Sydney yelled out, Kathy? How is Kathy? What about me? That bitch broke my nose my dad paid $3,000 for, and she's going to pay for it. Althea looked at Sydney to respond and busted out laughing. Nice shiners, dude. And Roman, Kathy is okay, a little bruised, but she'll be fine tomorrow. Now, Barbie, I did no such thing. If I did, it was an accident. As for paying for it, officer, we were playing dodgeball at school, and I saw the ball coming at me and I caught it. Still don't know how I did that, and threw it back as hard as I could. I didn't think I'd really hit anybody. I mean, look at me. I'm barely 5 feet tall, don't weigh more than 105 soaking wet. And look at her, officer. She's a good 5'7" and probably goes $150 on the hoof. Who they gonna believe, Barbie? Roman linked Caleb and said, I'm about to lose my shit, dude. That was funny as fuck, Caleb said. She's a beautifully funny, crazy Luna, and things are gonna be fun around here. Laughing in his link. Roman linked Althea saying, You look beautiful, and Althea squeaked, glaring at him. He just smirked. Sydney said, Roman make that her punishment? He said what? That she pay for a nose you should have never gotten in the first place? You are a goddess-damned wolf, for Pete's sake. And Althea fell out of the chair laughing. And the boys couldn't hold it together anymore. And Sydney started wailing like a banshee, saying he didn't love her, and Dedra said, Oh, for the love of the goddess, waving her hand and freezing Barbie. Her father jumped up yelling to fix his daughter, so she froze him too. And there was no controlling the laughter coming from the ones on the floor, and Roman couldn't stop it. It bubbled up his chest, and he looked at Dee, who was trying to hold hers too. And they busted out a belly-rolling laugh. Once everyone calmed down, and the two still frozen, Roman said, It kills me to punish you, Althea, but we can't have you going around breaking plastic noses as you see fit. Even though he chuckled, she saw it upset him. Oh, she says, How about you punish me by making me cook dinner for the whole pack house for a week? Please? I can do it, and when fake Barbie balks about me getting off lightly, ask her if she wants to do it. And she grins. He laughed and stuck his hand out and said, Deal? She took it, and he pulled her to him. And Dee flipped her wrist, and a dark partition separated them from the room. He pulled her into his arms and said, I was an idiot. Can you forgive me? I really care about you, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. She stood on her tippy toes and kissed his chin and said, Get rid of the bimbo, and turned to walk away right through the partition, but he grabbed her hand and pulled her back to kiss her. She said no, bimbo first, and walked out of the office, with Dee running to catch up, waving her hand before leaving the office, causing World War III in her wake.
Chapter 7, Roman's POV.
As soon as Dee shut the office door, all hell broke loose. I took a deep breath and growled, Sit down. Sydney asked me where the little skank was, and I told her to watch her mouth. I said, Now, you will listen without interruption or interference. Althea has been given kitchen duty in the pack house for an entire week as punishment. Sydney, you are on laundry duty for the same amount of time. There will be no more bullying or deliberately hurting another pack member. No more. I have zero tolerance. As for your parents, Mr. Giz and Mrs. Eddy Banner, you will take parenting classes. There is something seriously broken for your daughter behaving this badly. Sydney, as Alpha, I have always to be above reproach. It is no longer possible for us to be seen together. And 3, 2, 1, she's up and off her chair in my face and screaming, You can't do that to me. I gave you 6 months of my life. You owe me that back. I was supposed to be Luna. You said you would choose me. All eyes are on me as I slowly rise and say, Is that all I said, Sydney? What else did I say? Huh? Let's see. You'll always love me, right, Ro? What? Sure, yeah. And you'll make me Luna, right? What? No. And you started bawling and slobbering and snorting. I was so grossed out I said, Sure. I will choose you as my mate when I'm 50 if I haven't found her yet. That was the conversation. And hey, look me up in 32 years and we'll say where we're at. And she runs out of the office. Banner stood up and yelled at me. You were supposed to mate Sydney. You promised her. I snapped, Stand down. I will drop you like a stone. I turned to Mrs. Banner and knelt in front of her, putting my hand on her shoulder. She was trembling. I linked Dylan, does your dad hit your mom? And Dylan came back with, not my dad. I looked at her and said, Mrs. Banner, do you have any reason why Sydney has gotten so far out of hand? After witnessing what I did today, I'm ready to send her to training camp. She perked up at that, and I noticed. I asked her softly, does Sydney hit you? She nodded and started crying. Banner wrapped her in his arms, and I said, start talking. Leave nothing out. And he did. It started a little over a year ago, when she set her sights on you. We are struggling to meet ends because everything about her has to be perfect for you. New boobs, new nose, $400 a month for hair and nails, new clothes every week, sometimes twice a week. If her mother tells her no, she beats her. If I tell her no, she beats her mother. The worst I have seen was Friday, when she came home livid about the new girl in town, and she wanted her hair dyed red and Angie said no. She beat her and choked her so bad, I thought she'd killed her. Alpha, we can't go home tonight. She will kill us. I turned to Dylan and said, get them a room ready. This shit stops today. Dylan asked his dad, why didn't he say something? And his dad whispered, we were scared. And my heart broke for them. I tell them to go get something to eat. I'm stunned. How did I not see this? I asked Caleb, I said, I don't even know what to say. I mean, she wants red hair. Does she know Althea is my mate? Caleb shook his head and said, no, I think she wants to be Althea. She's petite and beautiful and funny. Everything Sydney is not. I nodded. That makes kind of twisted sense. Dylan came back in and sat down staring at the floor. I said, you want to talk about it, bro? And he says, how did I not know? I mean, I know she's a piece of shit, but she takes Psycho to a whole new level. And how will Luna handle it when she finds out Sydney is my sister? I laughed and said she'll offer you her sympathies, and then laugh how you once again got the shitty end of the stick. And we all laughed. We needed it, and our Luna provided that. Already making us stronger. Caleb, where we at on the Gold Moon situation? And what's Michael's last name? Caleb said, he changed his name to Gold when his mother married Alpha Gold. He's still sending trackers out 3 sets of 2 to towns in the area. They aren't searching, though. They go to the towns and sit in diners all day sipping coffee and playing cards. It's great. I told you I didn't think they would fight for anyone other than their true alpha. I started laughing. Then I said, I want his birth name. Bad seeds don't just turn up. They're planted. Caleb said, on it, Brent says. How did you remember that whole conversation? I was dying you doing her part of the conversation in a high-pitched voice. How did you keep a straight face? I said I have a photogenic memory. It comes in handy. Caleb jumps up and says, his name is Michael Hawthorne. His father is the rogue alpha from the defunct Mountain Ridge pack. I leaned back and rested my head. Well, ain't that just fucking dandy? I will have to tell her. I won't hide anything from her. I started off on one bad foot. I can't do both. I told Brent I want warrior training to step up, extending workout times a half hour. It will build endurance. And I want trackers out checking nearby towns. If they see any trackers from Gold Moon, find out what you can. We will not be caught with our pants around our ankles, gentlemen. Caleb says. He said that like he's experienced it. And they all laughed. They needed it. They decided to grab something to eat and a beer and play COD. Walking out of the office to head down, my phone rang. Caleb said, let the machine get it. And I said, no, go ahead, I'll catch up.
Chapter 8. Call me bitch like you mean it.
Althea's Pav. We were driving home when Aunt Dee says, you owned him? Oh my goddess, when you lit into Sydney with your little please officer voice, I couldn't look at anyone because I knew I would lose it. Then Roman yelled at her about having a plastic nose when she was a wolf. Oh my goddess, priceless. I was laughing so hard again. Then I sobered up and said he wants to try Aunt Dee. What if he decides he doesn't want me again? She said, oh honey, that's not how it works. Once you accept the bond, it only grows. You will see, my sweet girl. They reached home, and I darted inside to fix some chicken fajitas for dinner, and I poured my aunt some wine. Then I called her down to eat. After dinner, I talked Aunt D into sitting for me to paint, or the third bottle of wine convinced her. Either way, we were laughing and talking when all of a sudden there was a pounding on their front door and a loud, angry voice yelling to open up. I turns to D and said, "Wait here," and trotted down the stairs and stood on tippy toes to see. "Ah, fuck." I yelled up to my aunt, "It's just Barbie and come on down." I yelled, "Go away." I tried linking Roman, but I was either too far or he has his wall up. We sat down on the sofa and turned the TV on and again pounding. I yelled, "Stop," and then "Go away." Next she started with the insults. I was a seductress who stole her man. I was a slut who slept with the whole town, apparently. No small feat for only being here 3 days. I was a useless witch who should be burned at the stake. Yeah, like that would work with a fire witch. But when she started denigrating my aunt and then my mother, all bets were off. I yanked our door open and shoved her off the porch and landed beside her. I shoved her again and I said, "What the fuck's your problem? What in the fuck did I ever do to you?" She screamed, "You are a filthy piece of trash, a witch, a disgusting excuse of flesh. Why don't you just die, you bitch?" I glanced at D and said, "Call Roman and tell him to come pick up his trash because I'm about to fuck a bitch up." She tried to punch me, and I ducked under it and kicked her in the ribs. She rolled out of it and charged at me. I throat punched her and threw her over my back to the ground and kicked her in the spine. Just as I grabbed her hair and pulled her hair back so she could see my eyes, I noticed the guys walk out of the tree line, and I said, "The next time you try to run with the big dogs, just don't, and don't fucking get it twisted like you did with Roman. Call me bitch like you mean it." I dragged her over and tossed her at their feet, said, "Take your trash out," and walked in the house to shower. Gross as skank juice touching me. I shivered. I walked downstairs and toward the kitchen, and I hear hushed voices. I rounded the corner and hear Caleb say Aunt her stepmother is really his mate. And I said, "What the fuck? Are you telling me this was all a setup? Those two fucktwats set my dad up and murdered him. They moved into our house, and she married and fuked my father. At least I think they did. They slept in the same room. They probably did." I hear my aunt say, "She's processing. You'll get used to it. Told you she is too smart." She took the end of that statement and ran with it and came up with exactly the right story. Right now she is processing her dad having SX. It's a lot. He hasn't been gone 5 days until midnight. And it hasn't hit her yet. I ran back into the kitchen and said, "Aunt D, I need one of those burner phones. I need to call Neil," she says. "Who, what now? Who's Neil?" "My taekwondo instructor, Roman. I know we are new mates, but I accept you, Roman Baron, as my mate." He blinks at me and says, "I accept you, Althea Gold, as my mate." And I took a huge leap of faith and said, "I'm the Red Wolf. My father was one before me. Every generation, only one is born. Always an alpha, and not always to a red wolf. But there is only one, because when the alpha mantle falls on a red wolf's shoulders, the wolf is beastly, huge, and can go berserk." Don't look at me like that. You think my dad was an idiot? He trained Auburn and me as soon as she spoke to me at 4 years old. We are one. I control her as much as she controls me. I said, "Watch," and I let Auburn in, except she's friskier than me, and she held me back as she walked to Roman and jumped up on the counter and jerked him to her and kissed him like the world was about to end. I wanted to cry. She took my first kiss. Roman said, "Hello, Auburn," and we watched as Ambrose pushed forward and kissed her. Backing off, he said, "I thought only I could bring their wolf forward." "But you called him," Auburn said. "Yes, I did. But you can do it because you were fated to me. I have to go now." I made Althea sad. He asked how she did that, and she said I took her first kiss. Caleb said. That was the coolest shit I have ever seen. Everybody laughed. Once I was back, I said, let's go to Walmart. I really want to make that call tonight. Shit, Aunt D. We need to find accommodation for at least 200 people. I'm bringing my pack home. Once a rogue, always a murderer. That son of a bitch will rue the day he messed with the golds. Dee said, Roman, my keys are hanging by the door. I don't want her driving like this. They're driving, and he says you definitely fuked a bitch up trying to get her mind off everything. She looked at him and said, she's lucky I didn't rip her throat out. I was going to when I yanked her head back. I have to find some place for my pack. He said, hear me out. We are mates. My pack is your pack? I would like to think your pack is my pack. We can accommodate them. We have room. And you are my Luna, so it's something to think about. She threw her arms around him and said thank you. Then she said something that shocked him. My father came to my dreams the night he was killed and told me Gold Moon was no more unless I had a second son that wanted to rebuild it. The property will always belong to a Gold. Michael can do nothing with it. He may have changed his name, but he isn't a Gold. And everything that runs Gold Moon can only be accessed by blood DNA, right down to transferring a property deed. Every dime, every jewel, every piece of property can only be accessed by gold blood. He also told me I would meet my mate and to be patient, because he would see me eventually. Let's get that phone. Once back in the car, she tells Roman they can't mate until after her birthday because they will never reach their full strength without her mantle. He just nodded. Then he said, Sydney has 4 broken ribs, a fractured spine, and she can't talk because of an esophageal tear. Then he laughed. She just shrugged. Back home, she said she was calling Neil and would have it on speaker. It rang twice.
Chapter 9. Preparing for the Refugees.
Althea's pav, I wait. On the 3rd ring, I get antsy, and then a groggy voice said, hello. I said, Neil, it's Thea. Can you talk? He said, yeah, give me a minute. I hear rustling and doors opening and closing, and finally he says, I'm driving. Pretty sure it's safe. Where are you? No, don't tell me. It's gone to shit here. Rogues wandering in and out, taking our women, raping them. I beat one to death yesterday for trying to rape little Cassidy. I interrupted him. I said, Neil, I need you to be stealthy. Gather our pack. Head to the shed on the western border. Enter the shed and slide the wooden box off the corner of the floor. There's only the one. There will be a loose floorboard. Pry it up and open the lid to the access pad. The code is 0515. A door will slide into the wall, and you will find a tunnel. It will lead you through the mountain. Call me just before you enter the tunnel, and I will arrange transport to our new destination. My dad told me Gold Moon is dead, Neil. He said, oh, sweet child, Gold Moon is not a place. And I finished, it's a people, and we laughed. He asked if he could call me with any questions, and I said yes. But we would have to have a code word, so I would know if he was being coerced. And he wanted avocado. We argued, but I just gave in. Fuck it. I said, Aunt D, we need transportation. Rent as many buses and hire as many drivers. We will enough to fit at least 300 people. Roman, can I use the pack house kitchen so I can prepare enough handheld foods to hold them over until I can get a hot meal in them? Aunt D, pack up all our healing potions and herbs for poultices and topical ointments. They may be perfectly healthy, but my heart is saying no. Roman walked up behind me and held me tight against his chest. He says, you take charge and make decisions, and my cock is chewing my zipper apart from the inside. You are the easiest thing I have ever seen, and my insides turned to jelly and my knees buckled. He chuckled so deep in his chest it only made it worse. He picked me up and raced to my room. He slammed the door and threw me on the bed, grabbed the waistband and yanked them down as he stood up. He just ripped my shirt off me and poof, I'm naked, like magic. He stripped down and my eyes were like saucers. I said there is no way in hell that will ever fit in me. He laughed and said not tonight, it won't. We will not mate until we can mark each other. I said about that, to reach our full power, we have to let our wolves mate. He laughed and said, a little slower, Eog. I said we have to let our wolves mate and mark each other. He said, okay. We wake up on your birthday. I have my wicked way with you, because our wolves are not taking your first time. Then we do your lunar ceremony, and pack run, and our wolves break away to do the dirty. I said I am getting a headache. Auburn won't stop strutting and flipping her as in the air, whipping her tail to the side. My wolf is a slut, apparently. And he laughed so hard he fell off the bed in all his naked splendor, and dear goddess, that man is blessed. I rolled off the bed and Cat crawled up his tree trunk legs until I was eye level with his cock. I wrapped my hands around his massive girth and pumped up and down slowly. I wrapped my mouth around the head and licked his precum off with my tongue. He tangled his hands in my hair and groaned out. He whispered that feels so fucking good, and that gave me the courage to suck him into my mouth. I kept pumping with my hand and rocking my mouth up and down, pushing his further into my throat. I reached with my other hand and tugged and rolled his balls between my fingers. He moaned louder and said, damn baby, you're going to make me CM, and that had me feeling confident. I picked up my pace and forced him further down my throat, and I felt him tensing. He roared out, I'm coming, and I felt his warm, salty goodness hit the back of my throat. I cleaned him up with my mouth and climbed up his body. He brought me close to his face and kissed me so deep my toes curled, and he said that was the most amazing feeling in the world. And I asked, why do they call it a blowjob when you suck on it? Kind of like a lollipop or an ice cream cone. A big, fat, throbbing ice cream cone, and he pinched my ass, and I squealed. He said that is the cutest sound in the world and rolled me over, then said, but your mind is something else. He leaned in and kissed me. I moaned into his mouth and someone pounded on my door. Caleb said, we need you downstairs. I jumped up, not bothering with underwear, and hopped into my sweatpants and picked my shirt up. It was destroyed, so I put his on and ran out the door. I walked in and Aunt Dee handed me the phone on speaker. I said, Neil, and he said avocado, and we all laughed. He said, we are leaving at 4 a.m. at shift change. I said, okay, do we have a head count? And he said 248, not including children. We lost a lot of people, Munchkin. A few left, but many died. I choked up and a tear rolls down my face. I asked, any injured? He said 18. I asked, critical? He said 2. I told him halfway through the tunnel is a place to sleep and rest up. I looked at Dee and said they should be through the mountain by 4 tomorrow. Neil, blow the access panel on the inside of the door. It will keep the door from sliding open. He hung up and I said, this is going to be a long night. Dee said buses are arranged and I am working on drivers. Also, I can't transport the critically injured on a bus. I'm working on it. Roman said, I got the drivers and we own 3 RVs. We will drive down and maybe the pups can sleep on the way back. I said I need to get to the pack house to start food prep. And he asked, wanna run? Our wolves can get acquainted. So we took off.
Chapter 10 Road Trip.
Dylan is driving and Roman is napping, while Althea is dancing in her seat and singing with a radio. She's running on buttloads of coffee and pure adrenaline. Roman is worried. She hasn't grieved for her father yet. He gets up and sits on the sofa beside Dedra. He said, I'm worried she's pushing too hard. She's going to burn out. Dee pats his hand and says, you are a good man. I had my doubts, but when she owned your as in the office yesterday, and you didn't snap her neck, I knew everything was going to be all right, just like with her. Everything will be all right. She is just worried about the pack. They are her people, and she loves them. I don't know them. When my sister was killed, I moved to Golden Moon permanently. Philip and I decided I would be kept separate from the pack to offer her a safe haven if things went sideways. She's a red wolf and a fire element witch. She's deadly when she needs to be. Sydney can attest to that. But being what she is makes her very sought after. Everyone wants to mate the only red wolf in our generation. What no one seems to remember is only her true mate can share her power. And once it's shared, she can only get it back if her mate dies. But very few red wolves survive the loss of their mate. Her father only barely survived. He hung on to be able to teach her everything she knows about her wolf. Roman said, "When she falls apart, and she will, I will put her back together. You can bank on it." She smiled and linked, "I know." He jumped and looked at her, and she giggled. They pulled up in a semicircle around the cave. Althea jumped out and ran to the steel doors and bit the base of her palm. Dripped blood on the keypad and punched in a series of number. The doors creaked and began to slide open. Roman looked at Dylan and said, "We seriously have to look into this technology." And Dylan agreed, said he will ask Luna who they worked with. Althea called out quietly for Neil, and he answered, "Here. We need assistance," and everyone surged the entrance. An hour later, and a million tears from his little mate, he settled her into a chair on his lap and wrapped her in his arms. He whispered, "Sleep." They stopped to fuel up and grabbed some snacks. Althea and Dee were walking out of the store just as Neil stepped off the last bus to stretch. They watched him raise his head and scent the air. His eyes roamed the parking lot, and he spotted her. He ran to her and swooped it up, spun in a circle. Roman and Althea heard him say, "I have waited for you forever, my love." "What's your name, my beautiful mate?" she said. "Dedra Callum." And he said, "I, Neil Thomas, accept you, Dedra Callum, as my mate." And she said, "I'm a witch, so mine's a little different. I, Dedra Callum, choose you, Neil Thomas, as my mate." He leaned down and kissed her, and she giggled. Althea said, "So that's how that's supposed to work." And Roman pinched her ass. She squealed, and they were headed home. Althea was sitting on Roman's lap. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I left them. I left them to suffer to save myself." "What kind of alpha does that make me?" he said. "Sometimes we have to take the hard road to pave the way for something better. Baby, your father had just died. You have yet to deal with it, yet you moved heaven and hell to rescue them. And their rescue was all you're doing. When you learned their dire situation, you had them up and out of there in under 24 hours. That makes you a great alpha." And she broke. Her tears became sobs, and she said, "I miss him so much." He whispered, "I know, baby. Let it go. Your heart needs to heal." She finally fell asleep, and Dylan walked over and sat in a chair. Dylan said, "She finally broke? I was worried she was going to bury it. I am so happy you found her, bro. I feel an attachment to her, like a sister. She casts such a huge shadow for how small she is." Roman laughed and shut his eyes for a minute. Next thing he knew, Dylan was waking him to let him know they had reached Packlands. He linked Caleb and asked if everything ready, and Caleb said yeah. There were 30 cottages available, sleeping between 8 and 10. There are 57 available rooms in the pack house. Thanked him and started directing where everyone should go, and then instructed them to hold the line while their alpha addressed the situation. And Althea stepped up to the podium, and she began to speak. "Golden Moon, I stand before you a humbled alpha. I feel like I deserted you a week ago and left you to suffer in my stead. My father came to me in a dream the night of his murder. He told me Golden Moon is no more. My family's legacy is gone. But then someone reminded me that Golden Moon is not the place, but our people. Alpha Baron has graciously offered sanctuary as well as a permanent home here in Sioux River. But for now, rest, eat, and recover." Roman stepped up and said, "Golden Moon, you need to renounce your pack bond so Michael cannot alpha command any of you to return or to divulge information." One of the warriors in the back spoke up, saying he has already tried with several of them. but their allegiance to the true alpha is stronger. Roman said, excellent. Althea is my mate and will be my Luna, but she will always also be your alpha. So you are being given two choices. You can swear allegiance to me and Sioux River, or you can swear allegiance to your true alpha, Althea. No one will fault you, and no one will be upset by it. Neil stepped forward and said, we all collectively swear allegiance to you and Althea as our alpha pair. Althea had tears in her eyes, so proud of her pack. It took the better part of the morning to get everyone sworn in and settled. As Althea was walking toward the infirmary, Cassidy ran up and took her hand. She smiled at the younger girl and asked where she was headed, and Cassidy said to check on her grandmother. When they walked into the infirmary, her aunt said, thank Goddess, I need your help. Martha is going to lose her leg if we don't hurry, and Althea took off after her. Martha is Cassidy's grandmother and all things maternal. She was a constant in Althea's life since her birth, and Althea would be damned before she would lose her. She is also Neil's mother, so this should be interesting. Althea and Dedra walked into Martha's room, and Althea kissed her forehead, telling her not to worry, she would be better soon. Althea looked down at her leg and gasped. She was burned, from her thigh to the top of her foot. The skin of her shin so thin you could almost see her tibia. Dedra reached her hand out, and Althea took it. Then she laid her other hand on the very top of Martha's thigh where there was no burn, and the pair of witches began to chant quietly.
Chapter 11. Healing Hearts and Raging Fury. Roman's POV.
I stood at the window of the older woman's room, and a young girl stood close. She looked over and asked if Althea would be staying here, and would they be able to too. He nodded and asked her name. She said, I'm Cassidy, and that's my grandma in there. Her leg got messed up saving a 4-year-old from a fire. Michael demands absolute servitude, and he is vicious and barbarous at best. The little boy in question kicked Michael in the shins after he had seen Michael sodomize and kill his mother. Michael grabbed him and threw him into the funeral pyre alive, and my grandma rushed in to save him. She was struggling to pull him free, and her pants caught fire. We were able to ice her leg and save her. Sadly, Tommy didn't survive his burns. I could only stand there in silence. A blinding rage engulfed me, as I realized my link had been opened to my mate, and she had heard everything. The rage I was feeling was not my own. As I stand here, I realize there are probably hundreds of stories of the cruelty of that man. How he destroyed an entire pack in less than a week. He vowed to himself to end him, to eliminate the threat to his mate and pack. And a small voice in his head said, no, he is mine, and I will make him pay as he watches me take everything from him. My head snapped up, and I looked into the eyes of my beautiful mate. Her eyes were burning red, and her hair was floating around her head as the tips flicked flames around her, and I realized she was being consumed by her burning fury. I yelled at her, let's run, and before I could turn she was past me and out the door, shifting into her magnificent wolf as she jumped clear. I struggled to keep up, but my goddess, what an incredible sight. Her fur burning in the waning light, leaving falling and burrs in her wake. We ran for about 2 hours until she finally huffed her large body down beside the river. I sat beside her as I waited for her to speak. When she did, her voice sounded so small and defeated. I never wanted to be alpha. I always thought I would find my mate, and I would lead my pack beside him. They are my family. They were my home and hearth. Martha is like the grandmother I never had. I healed her, but the muscle damage is so extensive she will always have pain. I can treat it, but I can't make it go away. I failed them. I failed before I even had the chance to begin, and I will make Michael feel every pain he inflicted on my people. I laid down beside her and said, I am your mate, and we will lead side by side. We are an alpha pair, and our people will thrive under our rule. In 48 days, you will take on the mantle of true alpha. Then we will begin our lives as a team. making certain nothing like this ever happens to our people again. Baby, Golden Moon was a small pack, a peaceful pack. This plan to take it from your father was in the works a long time. We will find out what we are facing and how we will defeat the danger Michael presents. We are not a small pack. We are 15,000 strong with over 1,300 warriors. We will prevail. You did not fail. It isn't failure if you didn't know. She leaned over and licked my face and whispered, I love you. The happiness that flowed through me took my breath away. I shouted through the link, she loves me. And we heard the entire pack sound out happy howls. She giggled and said, let's go home. And I melted inside. I said, I am home. Wherever you are, that is my home. And she shifted. Standing there in all her naked splendor, my only option was to shift and pull her into my arms. I was not about to run back sporting a huge boner with nothing to hide it. She held me close and giggled. She said that would be awkward, huh? And I laughed. Damn, it feels good to laugh so freely again. I put my finger under her chin and tilted her face up to mine as I tasted her lips for the first time today. I whispered, Auburn and Ambrose may have stolen your first kiss, but that is your first Wednesday kiss. And I will find ways to make sure you have as many first kiss as your heart can hold. I love you. She smiled and the world lit up. She kissed me and shifted, running home with me on her heels. Once back at the pack house, she went back to the infirmary and I headed to my office. Opening the door, I saw Caleb on his tablet working on something. I said, get Dylan and Brent in here as I linked Neil to please meet me in my office. Then I linked Althea and told her I was holding a meeting, but would keep the link open so she can hear everything being said. She said that she is in with Martha and Neil had told her he was summoned. I asked what Neil was doing, and she replied visiting his mom. I said okay as Neil knocked on my door. I shook his hand asking how his mother is feeling, and he said better, but her leg was giving her quite a bit of pain. I spun my head around and said, Martha is your mother? Is Cassidy your daughter? He said, yeah, Martha is my mother. Cassidy is my older brother's daughter, my niece. He is gone, bled out trapped in a hunter's bear trap, and his mate succumbed to heartbreak. My mom and I raised Cassidy. I said, damn, I am sorry, and he only nodded. I introduced him to my circle. Then I asked him his rank in Golden Moon. He said, I am head warrior. I believe this pack refers to my rank as Delta as he nods in Brent's direction, so I am content just being a warrior. I have been head warrior 20 years now. I'm 36 and only just met my mate after all these years. I could use some getting acquainted time. And he laughs. I laughed with him and said I can understand that, but I am afraid I can't accommodate your wishes. I would like you to remain head warrior and work alongside our Delta training our troops. We have 3 divisions of warriors, fighters, hunters, and trackers. With 1,300 warriors and 200 more set to graduate, I want you to observe them in training and see which fighting discipline suits their individuality. In battle, it is necessary to have many styles of fighting. Keeps our enemies guessing. He let out a breath I didn't realize he was holding and said, I am relieved. I don't want to retire, but I didn't want to step on Delta's toes. I can do what you ask. I am proficient in several disciplines, and my idea would be to choose 5 warriors from each division of warriors and train them to different discipline, so they may train the others. Brent said he really liked that idea, and they would start tomorrow morning at 5. But wants Neil to train him 2 hours a day in every discipline. And I laughed. I said, now, Neil, tell us everything you know. We need to get on top of this and stay on top. And so he began his horror story after Michael had murdered Alpha Philip, and we know it was murder. We all smelled the wolfsbane on the body. The entire pack was in chaos. We had no Alpha. Michael demanded everyone submit or die. None of us wanted to submit. He went through the crowd demanding it. And if submission was refused, he struck them down on the spot. I linked everyone to submit after we had lost 15 of our people. I couldn't let any more die. I had to find a way to save us. We lost so many to death, and by the time morning came, we learned that not only had our Thea escaped and was safe, 20 families had escaped in the night. I will start looking for them, now that we have a safe place. I had already linked the 6 trackers Michael had out searching for Thea and told them to make their way here. So we went from a pack of 600 plus to a pack of less than 400 in one night. The next 2 days were horrendous. Michael had his father come in to be beta, and he brought over 100 rogues with him. They raped our women and killed anyone trying to stop them. Even the children weren't safe. There is no food, no electricity. Michael couldn't access pack funds and has begun to lose whatever sanity he possessed. He demanded Thea be found and brought to him in chains. Well, we weren't going to help him find her. I knew her extraction plan. We all did. But we have never known the particulars. We knew she would go to her aunt, but that was all. None of us knew the healer witch at our border cottage was her aunt. Philip was smart in his planning. Michael is building an army. He has rogues out recruiting. They accept anyone. The very dregs of society. Some feral, some near feral. Dangerous men with nothing to lose. Right now, he has about 300 men. He doesn't want war. He wants an apocalypse. I sat there stunned. I looked at my circle of now 4 men and said, well, let's get to planning. We don't want to disappoint him.
Chapter 12. Time to handle Sydney. Roman's POV. Still.
Caleb, what can you tell me about the Kathy situation? Even with everything that is happening, I don't want it to go unnoticed any longer. Caleb looks up from his tablet and says, the male in the home is Kathy's stepfather. He is a gambler with a drinking problem. A serious problem. He doesn't work, and the mother works 14-hour days at the seamstress's shop in town. She makes barely enough to keep the lights on, but the male takes it anyway. Kathy is the only child in the home. I tell him to remove Kathy and her mother from the home. Set them up at the single women's quarters. If the male is the mother's mate, I want him in rehab. Give it a month. If he shows no inclination to accept therapy or continues on this path, I will banish him. I want this done today. I also want WellCare checks made on every home in the territory. This cannot happen again. Caleb says, yes, Alpha. Now we have to plan a lunar ceremony. We have 48 days, and while that seems to be a lot of time, it will go by fast. With the extra warriors and the new training being implemented, we are in for a busy schedule. Althea and Dedra will most likely be able to help with the ceremony, and I am certain Althea will want to participate with training, especially with her Luna's ladies. I laughed, thinking any battle won will be a shock to the macho males who believe women are just made to be pretty and silent. Dylan, I want you to select 8 men from the elite guard and set up rigorous weapons training along with their physical training. I want them to shadow the Luna as well as Dedra. I want them protected at all times. Dylan replied, on it. Already have a few in mind. All right, gentlemen. Let's break for lunch. Afterwards, I want to meet with Sydney to determine what she needs to heal mentally. If there is any hope for her at all. I walked into the infirmary to check on the injured and to speak with Sydney. I wandered into Martha's room to introduce myself, and there stands my beautiful mate. I walk in and pull her into a hug, turning to smile at Martha. Hello, Martha. I am Alpha Roman, and I am so happy to see you awake and smiling. She radiated happiness, and I was pleased to see it. I told her I had made Neil my head warrior, that a man of his talents are not only needed, but greatly appreciated. She beamed at me, and Althea squeezed my hand, smiling at me. Martha Sook, it is my pleasure to meet you, Alpha. Thea told me you are her mate, and that makes me even more pleased. She was just telling me about the Luna ceremony. If I may suggest something, I was head of housekeeping for nearly 30 years at Golden Moon. I was in control of all the kitchen staff as well as the maids and servers. If you could find something along those lines that I could do, I would love to help. I'm not good at being idle. I get myself in trouble. She laughs. I look at Althea and back to Martha. I said, I appreciate that, Martha. And while we have a head chef in charge of the entire kitchen, I do not have a head housekeeper. The chef has been making the maid's schedules, and it is more of a headache than anything else. I have a high turnover of housekeepers because after about 2 weeks on the job, they all begin to believe they are in charge. If you will take over housekeeping and coordinating menus with the chef, I think we have a chance at a happy household again. Martha smiled and shifted her legs off the bed, saying she will start right now, and Althea stopped her. She said, You will not start right now. You will finish recuperating tonight, and I will revisit this in the morning. If I feel your leg is able to withstand your weight, I will summon all of housekeeping to the front sitting room to meet you. Martha laid back and allowed Althea to resettle her. We said goodbye to Martha and took our leave. Meeting the circle in the corridor, we headed to speak with Sydney. I knocked and opened the door to spy Sydney, with headphones in, dancing by the window. Stopping mid-twirl, she spotted us and ran to dive back in bed. She started to speak, "Oh, Roman," and I held my hand up to silence her. I said, Sydney, I don't understand. You were always a sweet girl, shy. You are the sister of one of my very best friends. And Althea said, What? Dylan looked ashamed. He said, I'm sorry, Luna, and Althea laughed and laughed. Then she said, Damn, dude, you just keep on pulling the shitty end of the short stick. And Sydney exploded. Luna, are you fucking kidding me right now? I am Luna. Everyone knows this. Roman, reject this bitch. Now, I won't stand for this. I yelled silence. You are not now, nor will you ever be my Luna. You have been found guilty of physically abusing your parents, of bullying and abusing a myriad of pack members, and of laying your hands on our true Luna. These are your options. Attending academy for training and therapy to get to the bottom of your maniacal tendencies. Everyone snickers. Stay at the pack, attend regularly scheduled training and therapy sessions, and you will move into the single women's quarters, or you will be banished. Should you choose the second option, you will have no contact with anyone your age or younger. If I hear one inkling of abuse of any kind to anyone, you will be banished. You will no longer attend school. Your courses will be online. You will take your meals in quarters, and you will be evaluated once a week. If you choose the first option, the course is 6 months long, at which time you will be evaluated, and a decision will be made to determine whether you will return to the pack or banished. She says, So I'm going to be banished no matter what I choose. I said no. Your banishment depends on you. She responds, I need to speak to my mother. And Dylan loses it. You have no parents. You have no family. You are not allowed near my mother, much less speak to her. Never again, Sydney. Never. You lost that privilege. Althea giggles and says, Damn, dude. Tell us how you really feel. Sydney is bawling and screaming and begging, and Althea waves her hand and silences her. We all look at her, and she shrugs, says, She gives me a headache. And we all just crack up. I said, baby. We need her to give us an answer so we can get to the rest of our day. She says, Feelini, and waves her hand again. I said, Sydney, what's it going to be? She glares at Althea, while Althea just smiles. Then she says, I will go to the academy. Maybe when I get back she will be dead. And Althea says, Way to stay positive, and walks to the door. I said, Brent, 2 guards on this door, 247, until transport arrives to take her away. I looked at Sydney. You will stay in this room until transport gets here. You may shower and dress. Dylan brought a bag with the clothes you will need. We're done here. Just as Althea and I are leaving the infirmary, I get a mind link from Southern Border Tower. Alpha? I said, Yeah, Brandon. He came back. There are 6 trackers here from Golden Moon. I said, Send them through. They are expected. We're waiting on the steps of the pack house when the trackers showed up. Althea squeals and jumps into the arms of one of them, and Ambrose roars. We grab her back away from him, and he apologizes immediately. She punches me in the chest, and my breath stutters. She punched me. She says John is like an uncle to me, old enough to be my father, and now it's my turn to apologize. John grins at me and says, "She's like a mama bear about all of us. I've been training that little girl how to track since she was old enough to walk. Could track a flea on a cat's from 50 yards. And everyone laughs." Then he said Neil has told him everything that is going on, and they has some information to share. I swore them into the pack, and we headed to my office.
Chapter 13. It was one time.
Roman called his inner circle to the conference room. Then he linked Neil and asked him to join them. John and the trackers were already seated. A knock at the door has Roman saying, "Come in," to reveal Dedra, and she says, "I'm sorry, Alpha. I was told you were in here, but I wasn't told you were busy." Roman said, "Not at all, and how can he help?" She said, "It is just about some supplies I need at the infirmary. It can wait." He says, "Nonsense. This is an informal meeting. Have a seat, and we can discuss it as order of business." She was sitting down when the other four came in. She smiled and winked at Neil, and his grin lit up the room. And Althea started singing, "It's getting hot in here, so take off your clothes." And Roman said, "Okay, let's get serious." But everyone laughed anyway, and he sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. He says, "I have lost control of my pack. Can you four be serious?" She stuck her tongue out, and he pinched her butt. She squealed, and everybody lost it. They finally settled down. Roman said, "These 6 gentlemen are our new trackers," and introduced them. "John, please share the information you have for us," John says. Neil was a little vague on why we were meeting at this pack, so we decided to sneak into Golden Moon and see if we could get a grasp of the situation, and we witnessed utter chaos. Michael was storming around the compound, punching rogues, yelling, "You're telling me 300 people just disappeared? Just poofed the fuck out of here." And with every word he spoke, he punched a rogue. He is ordering an extensive search for Thea. He is sending rogues in all directions to check packs for her. He is sending 10 at a time, on a search and destroy if necessary. We should possibly think about stepping up patrols. All due respect, Alpha. The rogues we talked to on our missions all said the same thing. He was promising them money and women. Half of the ones we met were feral. When they get there and find out Michael has neither, it's going to go one of 2 ways. They are either going to kill him or fight with him on the promise of those 2 things. He has raided smaller packs in the area, taking the women and forcing the men to join his army. He almost acts like he himself is going feral. He knows Thea is the Red Wolf, and that's why he wants her. Roman asks how he knows. She shrugs. "He could have seen me shift. I don't know. I know he doesn't know I'm a witch, though. My dad ordered me to never do magic at the pack house," Dedra says, "because he wanted his home to stay standing," Althea said. "Let it go, Aunt D. It was one time." "Let it go," Dee laughs and says, "Never. One of the funniest days of my life. I have to tell it. My little munchkin over here was not always the vision of seamless magic she is today. One sunny afternoon, our girl was learning to perfect her telekinetic and levitation skills. She was 5, and with the innocent mind she still possesses, she decided to combine the skills to save her some time. Her mother told her not to do it, threatened to block her magic for a month. Nothing, nope, gonna do it anyway. She had been levitating and had gotten good height. I mean treetop high, and discovers she can move rocks with her mind at the same time. The rocks got bigger, and they got higher. Her mother and I are screaming at her to come down. She's so far into her head. She's not hearing us. In her infinite 5-year-old wisdom, she decides she's strong enough to move a boulder now. I'm talking 6 feet high and about 5 feet wide boulder. It starts to lift, and her mom and I are damned impressed and still trying to get her to stop. But we watch the boulder as it rises higher and higher. Now it's about house high, and we are trying our damnedest to get her to let it go. She can't hear us. A bird zips past her head, startling her, and she snapped her head left, causing the boulder to fly through the air and through my house, to land in the middle of my bed. The entire room erupted into laughter, and Althea felt her ears burn. It was one time. I don't do it anymore. I had a headache and a nosebleed for 3 days. And they laughed harder. Caleb asked if they had to rebuild, and Dee said, "Sure." Little Miss promptly fell asleep, so her mom and I spent the afternoon rebuilding. Although your version of rebuilding differs greatly from mine. Her mom tried to block her magic while she slept and couldn't do it. Then we tried together, and it still didn't work. We then realized she was stronger than both of us, so decided we weren't going to try and piss her off. And again the room cracks up. Roman looks at John and asks, "Will you take position of lead tracker and train my trackers?" He agreed, and they shook on it. Roman lifted Althea into his lap and played with her hair. She leaned against his chest as he said, "Brent, double up patrol. On times and numbers. Caleb, I want pivotal video cameras every 15 feet around the perimeter. Find me some goddess damn technicians to monitor the cameras and drone flying capability. I want all the drones serviced and ready to deploy. Dylan, I want the elites you have chosen to report to Neil every morning for combat training. He can get with you on a time schedule. Now, Dedra, what supplies did you need at the infirmary? I also wanted to ask you if we find several young women who are interested in the medical field and send them to the infirmary, could you train them? I am struggling finding jobs to help everyone." She responds with, "I am low on everything from alcohol to Q-tips. I am struggling to find a single Band-Aid." That's an exaggeration, but still, as far as aids, that's a hell yes. Extra hands will help a lot. I also need to either order my herbs and oils or get to my shop to pick some up. My potions, tonics, and poultices will help our patients heal quicker. He said, "Consider it done," and slid a Black American Express across the table with, "There's a laptop in my office you can use, whatever you need." He followed with, 48 days, and we have a Luna ceremony. Any ideas on colors, venue, flowers? Althea said, "Irises, pack colors, and the backyard. It will be beautiful under the stars." Dylan laughs and says, "Well, that was easy."
Chapter 14, Exhaustion and Cranky Pants.
Althea and Roman went to his room to try and get a few hours sleep. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of 8-hour training days, getting snipers and archers proficient, 3 weeks of planning and strategizing. 3 weeks of random attacks from rogues at each border, and she was exhausted. She stepped into the shower and soaked her hair. Just as she reached for her shampoo, his hand stops her. He picks it up and squeezes some in his hand and massaged it into her hair. She leans against and moans. He bends down and kaises down her neck and across her shoulder as he slides his hand up her waist to cup her breast, slowly rolling, pinching, and pulling her nipple. She moans deep in her throat, and he spins her around, lifting her against the shower wall, and kaises her so deep she feels her toes curl. She wraps her legs around his waist and tangles her fingers in his hair. Moaning into her mouth, he pushes against her, and she feels his cock pulsing on her mound. She gasps. His hand slides between them, and his 2 fingers run down her slit. He whispers, "So wet, baby," and separates her folds to tease her clit. She moans out his name, and he loses it at the sound. He drops her to the floor as he kneels at her pissy, like it was just one movement, and dives his face in to lick and suck her clit. His tongue dances in rapid circles as he dips 2 fingers inside her. He links, "Dear goddess, you are so tight, so wet, you taste so sweet." He pumps his fingers in and out, crooking them upwards to pound them against her G-spot, and she comes undone. She screams out, "Roman, Oh my goddess, Roman. And he slowly pumped his fingers in and out as he stood and kissed her. He said, I am counting days, my love, and I am going to ravish you. She whispered, I'm counting on it. And days too. He laughed and said, let's get dried and grab some dinner. They all sat to eat, and were talking about the ceremony and the menu decided on and a myriad of other inane topics until Roman asked Neil what he was doing. Everyone shut up and looked. There sat Neil, on one knee with a ring box in his hand, and he says, Dee, I thought the goddess had forsaken me. I searched for you for 10 years. I eventually had to force myself to stop looking before I went feral. I believed you had died before I could find you. And then I stepped off that bus. I smelled the most wonderful scent in the world, and I knew I had found my mate. My love, will you do me the greatest honor of my life and be my wife? She broke down in tears and covering her mouth with her hands, levitates right off the chair in her excitement. Althea says, oh, she does it, and it's all cute. I do it, and my mom tries to lock my powers. How is that fair? And everyone cracks up. Dedra sits back down and slams her body in Neil's arms and screeches, yes. The crowd claps. Dylan looks at Althea and says, aren't you happy for them? Why such a long face? She rolls her eyes at him and says, of course I'm happy, you dillhole. It's just she gets to go home and get laid, and I am still 27 days, 4 weeks, Dylan. Before I get to be dacked down, and it's not fair. 5 people fell off their chairs, tears streaming down their faces, and Roman says, okay, ye cranky pants, let's get some sleep, baby. And carries her up to bed. She's asleep before he can get under the covers. Roman had gotten a good night's sleep for a change. He sent up a silent prayer that Miss Crankipants did too. He chuckled at his name for her. She rolled over and snuggled into his neck and breathed him in, wrapping her arm around him and whispered, I love you to the moon. Good morning. He grinned and rolled her to his back and kissed her. He said, good morning, my love. I love you. He leans back and nibbling on her bottom lip and pushing his tongue inside to taste her. Just as the kiss was heating up, Caleb linked he has a phone call from the academy. He said, fuck, this can't be good. They got up and dressed and headed to the office. As they entered, Caleb hands him the handset and Roman says, Baron. A voice on the other end says, Alpha Baron, this is Dean Edward Madden. There has been an issue with Sydney. Roman says, what kind of issue? He said. She tried to escape. She knocked her therapist out and went out the window. She ran to the edge of the property and was stunned hard enough by the fence for us to take custody. She is currently sedated and strapped to a gurney. I need to know how to proceed, Roman yells. Lock her in the cells. Throw her as out, shoot her. For all I care. Ungrateful little bye, Dean Madden. This is Luna Althea Gold. You put Sydney in her room and lock it from the outside. I am sending 2 guards to shadow her 247. You tell her I said. Not Alpha Baron. I said if she pulls another stunt like this, I will come there, and she will wish to our goddess that she had listened to you. You have a great day, Dean, and click. Roman picked her up and spun her. You are incredible. I love you. Then he looked at Brent, and he said, yep, on it. They all laughed. She said, I'm gonna start calling you cranky pants. And he pinched her ass. She squealed, and he laughed. He absolutely adores her squeal, and it happens every time. They grabbed breakfast and hit the field for training. After that, they ran the perimeter of the territory, so Althea had every inch of the property memorized. They headed back to the pack house to get some schoolwork done online. All of them decided there was too much going on to physically attend. That was their daily routine, day in and day out. As the days passed, intel on Golden Moon was sparse, but invaluable. Michael had built an impressive-sized army of rogues and Shanghai's wolves. Nearly 500 so far. Problem with that was only half would train in any way. The feral rogues wouldn't take orders and in 5 instances had killed the instructor for telling them what to do. It was funny but sad. A Shanghaied soldier told Michael how the alpha mantle operated with a red wolf, and that her power could only be shared with her true mate. Michael said he would kill her true mate, then mate with her. When the soldier pointed out it still would not work, remember? True mate? And wasn't he already mated anyway? And that pissed Michael off enough, he snapped the soldier's neck. Again funny, but sad. The night before the Luna ceremony, and both Roman and Althea are so keyed up, they can't sleep. Dedra tried telling them that tradition mandates they not sleep together the night before a wedding, and she was told, in no uncertain terms, to piss off. They finally drifted off around.
Chapter 15. Happy Birthday to Me.
Roman opens his eyes just as the sun hit the horizon. He smiles to himself. He has waited long enough, and he only prays he isn't a two-pump chump this morning. He rolls over and separates her legs with his knees. He kisses her lips and says, "Happy birthday, baby," kisses her neck and across her shoulder. He slips the strap of her kami down and does the same to the other shoulder. He says, "Wake up, my sweetest love." He slides her kami up her tummy and over her breasts. He takes one nipple in his mouth, nibbling, sucking, and tugging on it before doing the same to the other. He starts kissing down her stomach and kisses right above the waistband of her panties, and he lifts his head to see her eyes closed and says, "Wake up, birthday girl, or you're going to miss your own dacking down." She burst out laughing, and he rips her panties off. He leans down and gives her pissy a long lick and tickles her clit with his tongue. He slips a finger in her slit, running it up and down. Adding a second one, he soaks his fingers in her juices and then plunges them inside her. He thinks he will never get over how tight she is, how wet, how sweet she tastes on his tongue. He is pushing and pumping his fingers in and up, hitting her spongy G-spot every other plunge, all the while sucking and flicking his tongue against her clit. He says, "CM for me, baby," and she explodes all over his face and screams his name at the top of her lungs. He rose up and positioned himself at her entrance, rubbing his cock up and down her folds, making sure he would hurt her the least amount possible. He looked at her and said, "Are you ready?" And she nods. He says words, "Baby, use your words." And she looked up at him and says, "Fuck me, my love," surprising him. He pushes in slowly. He rubs her clit with his thumb as he inches in a little at a time. He reaches her hymen and pulls back a bit, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry," as he plunges through and seats himself to the base. He holds still. He is so close just by her tightness. He can still feel residual contractions along her walls from her first orgasm. He's thinking of anything else to stop from coming, in a litany in his brain. Baseball, paperwork, my old Aunt Gertrude baseball. And she says, "Move now, Roman fuck, eh?" He starts to move, slow, long, deep strokes at first. She moans and says, "Don't make me beg, baby. Not today." And the thought of her begging any other day had him even harder, and he started thrusting in and out of her at a frenetic pace. She wrapped her legs around his waist as he reached between them to her clit. It hardened and swelled under his thumb, and he pressed down hard on it as he plunged his canines into her neck, and she screamed out her orgasm. He felt everything about her, her love, her happiness, her scent of fresh rain and violets, and his thrusting became erratic as she moaned out, "I'm gonna see him again," and sunk her canines into his neck deep, and his seed shot into her, coating her walls. She waited until he had stopped pulsating and pulled her teeth free from his neck, licking it closed. They laid there together, wrapped around each other, and she said, That right there was even better than my fantasies." And he laughed and said, "H-Run, let's talk about these fantasies." And she blushed. He said, "That good, huh?" Laughing. He got up and walked in the bathroom, coming out a few seconds later with a wash rag and cleaned her up. He crawled back into the bed and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with everything he felt in his heart, and she climbed on top of him, saying round two with a SXY smile, and he laughed, saying, "Woman, you're gonna be the death of me." They made love 3 more times before they finally showered and headed to breakfast. Caleb and Dylan were the only ones at the table, and Roman asked where everybody is. Caleb waves his hand in a circle and said outside doing whatever. Hell, I don't know. And Roman looks at Dylan and says what's got him so discombobulated. Dylan says he caught a scent yesterday and Barrett thinks it's their mate, but he hasn't smelled it again. Then he whispers it has him batshit crazy, and Roman laughed. Just then, Althea comes out of the kitchen with a peanut butter chocolate chip muffin, singing and dancing, "Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me," and Dylan laughs, saying, "Looks like someone got dacked down this morning." And she grinned, says, "Michuam best dacking down in the history of all dacking downs on record," and everyone laughs. As Brent walks in the door asking, "They keep records?" And that was it. None of them could stop laughing for 10 minutes. The guys headed to the office and Althea walked out the back door. She saw Neil setting up tables anywhere Dedra was pointing, and she skipped over to him. She smiles shyly and says, "Neil, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Munchkin, you can ask me anything, anytime, anywhere." She giggled and said, "Well, you're kinda my uncle now, yeah, and I've known you my entire life. I was wondering if you wanted, that is, and I would be okay if you didn't, but Willie Alwickmedanthiel." He stood there a couple minutes, processing what she said. Then his eyes got great big and yelled, "Dee Dee, I need a tux ASAP. I'm walking our little girl down the aisle." Then he said, "It will be my greatest honor and privilege." She leaped into his arms just as Dee snapped her fingers, and he had on a tux. Everyone in the backyard cracked up. She helped string up fairy lights through all the trees surrounding the backyard. Then she went to the altar, and she and Dee wrapped it with honeysuckle vines and fairy lights. She put irises intermittently through the vines and thought it looked beautiful. They covered the tables in gold tablecloths and ruby red runners with iris centerpieces intertwined with twinkle lights. She saw an elderly gentleman standing off to the side watching what was going on. She skipped over to him and introduced herself. He said, "I am the pack elder, Benjamin, but you can call me Uncle Ben." She clapped her hands and says, "2 uncles in one day, happy birthday to me." And Ben laughed. He said, "I was just checking things out. I will see you later, Luna." And she yelled, "Just Althea, Uncle Ben." And she turned back to help finish up. The guys had been in the office just catching up and enjoying each other's company for the first time in weeks. He asked Caleb about the scent he picked up on, and he said, "It's sweet. I mean like caramel and cotton candy sweet. I caught a whiff of it 3 times yesterday, but when I tried to find the girl, there was no one there. I'm frustrated." Roman said, "Maybe she's not 18 yet and just coming into her mating scent. You know, we all just smell like pack until then." Caleb thinks about that a minute and says, "That makes sense." They settled into a comfortable silence, each holding a glass of whiskey on the rocks, enjoying just being there. Then the phone rings. Roman picks it up and says, "Baron," and slaps the speaker button so everyone would hear. "This is Dean Madden. Alpha. We, have a problem. One of your guards are dead, and the other is still unconscious." Roman roars, "What the fuck happened?" Madden says, "Sydney has been exchanging mutual favors for help, and one of sentries got caught in her snare. She talked him into stealing 2 hypodermics from the clinic to inject her guards. The idiot stole one with only wolfsbane in it, and one with wolfsbane and silver. The guard who died got the injection with silver." Brent yelled out, "I lost one of my men to silver poisoning. And why in the fuck do you have access to lethal injections?" Roman says, "I would like the answer to that as well." Madden says, "I had to requisition them last year when a wolf didn't respond to therapy and went feral, killing 3 people. I sent you the incident report." But this an argument for another day. I called to report Sydney has escaped, and we have detained the sentry, awaiting your instructions. And Roman says, I will take care of it tomorrow. We will be there by 9 in the morning. Keep me updated on the condition of our guard. And hung up, he stands up and says, just what the fuck I need. Althea is going to kill her. And they chuckled. He says, time to get dressed. Let's get me hitched.
Chapter 16, Alpha Luna Althea.
Althea had just stepped into the bedroom from the shower and sat down to blow dry her hair, just as Dedra and Kathy walked through the door with Martha, carrying a tray of champagne-filled glasses. All three looked so beautiful in their cream-colored dresses, with embroidered gold roses on the bodice and around the hem. They were doing Althea's hair and decided on a French braid down her left side so her mark was visible. Dee pinned rhinestones in the braid to give it sparkle. Kathy started on her makeup, and Althea felt a little overly warm and stood to open the French doors to the balcony, taking deep breaths of the cool evening air. She looked over at her aunt and said, I'm feeling weird, just as she fainted. Dee rushed over to her, checking her pulse, and looking at her face, and watching her. Sees a glow start at the top of her head, and move down her face to her shoulders and dissipate. Althea sat up and said, what the fuck was that? And Dee says, your alpha mantle. After the commotion settled down, Kathy finished her makeup and Althea slipped on her ruby red dress with gold threads running down the entire thing. Spaghetti straps, fitted bodice, and flared to the floor. She slipped on gold sandals and said, I'm as ready as I'm going to get, and moved to the door. She swung the door open, and there was Neil. He leaned over and kissed her cheek and said she looked stunning. She took his arm, and they followed the three women down the stairs. Her music started playing, and Martha started up the aisle.
Roman's POV.
I stand here at the altar, Caleb, Dylan, and Brent to my left, looking out over our pack. I open my link to speak to them. I am beyond humbled to stand before you today. I am so proud of you all. You have stayed by my side when I was at my worst, when I was arrogant, foolish, and immature. You showed me patience and tolerance when I deserved none. I am honored to share the most important day of my life with all of you. A cheer went up among the crowd, and a collective voice rung out, we love you, Alpha, and I felt my heart swell. Music started in the background, and I looked down the aisle. Martha stepped out first, followed by Kathy, and finally Dee. I waited with bated breath, and the music changed, and Christina Perri's 1,000 Years began to play. And then I saw her. A vision in red. A smile to make the goddess weep, and she started to walk towards me on Neil's arm. I couldn't look away. She had me mesmerized, and I was finding it hard to breathe. I never thought I would ever love someone this much. This all-encompassing feeling of such homest emotion, I felt my eyes tear up. She reaches me, and Neil places her tiny hand in mine and kisses her cheek, taking his seat in the first row. Althea looks over and squeals. She jumps and hugs Ben and says, "Hi, Uncle Ben." And I raised an eyebrow at him in question. He links, "We've met." A man of few words. He starts the ceremony, and she's practically vibrating off the stage. Her smile never leaves her face. Not for a second. Not even when a tear rolls down her beautiful face. She repeats all the words like Ben asked, and as soon as our hands are sliced and clasped, she lets out the squeal she was holding on to so desperately and throws her arms around my neck and kisses me. I throw my head back and release a howl, and the pack follows suit. I yell, "Let's run." And we all strip and shift. Althea and I lead the pack on the path to the river with Caleb and Dylan flanking. I mind-linked Caleb and told him to take the pack home and let the party begin. I nudge Auburn to veer to the left, and I lead her to a meadow with a small stream running through it. She walks over and takes a sip of water. I linked, "You are a good foot taller baby." She linked back, "MMHM and my mantle settled." She said, I am backing away for this part. I laughed. And Auburn dropped to her front paws, wiggling her butt, and takes off, wanting us to chase her. Who am I to deny my lady? So I sprint after her. I tackle her to the ground and lick her muzzle. She spins and waves her as in my face, and Ambrose takes charge. He slams her body down, holding her still with his front paws, and mounts her roughly. She yelps and snaps at him, letting him know, not cool. He pumps in and out of her slowly at first, then building speed. As he gets faster, his knot starts to swell. Just before it reaches full size, he forces it inside her and bites down on her neck. He is locked in and still pumping. As she turns just enough and latches onto his neck, throwing him into a frenzied climax that sends her over the edge, and they each remove their teeth at the same time, licking to heal their marks, and a burning feeling rushes through us, and Ambrose lets out a huge roaring growl that shook the ground. As the knot reduces and he releases her, he stands. He shakes out his fur and walks to the stream to drink. He looks at his reflection and sees flames dancing in his own eyes. He turns his massive head and looks at Auburn and realizes he now stands 2 heads taller than her, instead of the same height, like they were before the run. Auburn links Ambrose. My handsome mate, you are magnificent. My fire won't ever burn you now. Your strength will be unmatched. Together, we will be unstoppable. I love you. We ran back to enjoy their party. They stop and get dressed, and I grab her and kiss her. We walk into the party, and I hear, for the very first time, I present to the Sioux River Pack our Alpha and Alpha Luna Roman and Althea Baron. I walk her to the dance floor. I take 2 glasses of champagne and hand her one. I raise my glass and look into her eyes and say, I don't know what I have done in my life that granted me a treasure such as you. I loved you yesterday. I love you more today. I will love you every day, and I will love you louder on the days you need me to. We raised our glasses and drank. Then I whispered, thank you for not giving up on me.
Chapter 17, Dancing in the Dark.
They moved onto the dance floor, and her man started playing. He took her into his arms and spun her around, then dipped her low and kissed her nose, and he started to sing to her. I'm gonna change my way of doing things around here. Well, I'm turning over a new leaf, gonna get myself in gear. 'Cause I got a woman who's better than most, and I made a mess of her plans. Startin' today, all I'm gonna be is her man. 'Cause I've been a wildcatter and a go-go-getter, been an SOB right down to the letter. And I have had misadventures. I've even got pictures I'm even more than I can stand. But startin' today, all I'm gonna be is her man. I'm gonna give it all back, 'cause all I've done is take. Well, I've put her on the back burner while I was out on the make. But I've got a woman good enough to give me a second chance again. And startin' today, all I'm gonna be is her man. 'Cause I've been a wildcatter and a go-go-getter. Been an SOB right down to the letter. I've had misadventures. I've even got pictures. I'm even more than I can stand. But starting today, all I'm gonna be is her man. I'm a little bit late, but I'm wissin' up. And starting today, all I'm gonna be is her man, Gary Allen. He dipped her again and kissed her gently and whispered, thank you for loving me. She smiled through her tears and said, it is my greatest pleasure. And, I didn't know you could sing. He winked and said, hidden talents, and she giggled. They partied late into the night and fell into bed exhausted. They got up and climbed into the shower. He bumped his head on the shower head, and he said, what the fuck? He got out and dried off and went to the closet. Nothing he pulled out of the closet fit him. He tried a dozen pairs of pants and several shirts before he let out a frustrated growl. Althea ran out of the bathroom and to the closet. She saw him standing there looking so very confused, and she lost it. She laughed so hard at the look on his face. She said, baby, you're a foot taller easy. And he just quietly says, I have nothing to wear. She handed him a pair of basketball shorts and said, I will handle it. She took out her cell phone and was dialing a number as he stormed out the door. He linked the circle to meet him in his office. As he hears Althea say into the phone, "Send over what you have immediately. I will settle payment later." She linked Martha to arrange breakfast in the office for the 5, but double everything on Alpha's plate, and Martha linked back, worked up an appetite. "Yeah," Althea says wryly. He grew into it and entered the office. The boys jumped when they saw Roman. Caleb said, "Holy fuck, dude, you're a mountain." And they all looked and noticed he was barefooted, wearing shorts that hit him mid-thigh, and realized he has nothing that fits. And they started rolling. Martha walked in to Dylan laughing so hard he had fallen on the floor, and she turned to her servers, telling them where to set the plates. Althea thanked the girls and kissed Martha's cheek, saying, "I am expecting Winston from over at the tailor's. Please bring him right up when he arrives." Roman told her they have to be at the academy in about an hour, explaining to her what happened yesterday. Althea blew a gasket. "She killed one of our boys? One of ours? I want John out immediately, tracking that skank down. I want to feel her life leave her as I choke the shit out of her." Roman said, "I understand completely, baby. But first let's bring our men home." She wrapped her arms around him and nodded. 45 minutes later, Roman was dressed in a pair of jeans and a long-sleeved Henley. They were headed to the academy. He was so grateful the tailor has some ready, maids for big and tall men, and the tailor was thrilled an entirely new wardrobe was ordered for the commission he would make. An all-around good day, and it wasn't even 9 in the morning. They arrived at the academy, and as Roman walked in front with Althea, he could feel Caleb's eyes on him. He said, "Stop it, Caleb." And he says, "Dude, you're monstrous. I mean, yours was tall before, but shit. This is gonna take some getting used to. You're gonna squish the Luna. Oh my goddess, are you bigger all over? Did your cock get bigger too?" And Roman yells, "Caleb, damn bro." And Althea giggles. The dean met them at the doors to take them to the clinic. Explaining the guard hadn't woken yet, and Althea stepped into the room, walking straight to the guard and placing her hands directly over his mouth, and started chanting. They all watched as a black wisp of smoke started rising out of the guard's mouth until there was no more. Then the smoke dissipated and the guard woke up. The dean yelled, "What the fuck did you do?" And Roman had the man pinned to the wall, choking the life out of him. Caleb said, "Stupid move, dude," yelling at our Luna in front of her newly mated monster man. And Dylan laughed again. Althea put her hand on Roman's arm, saying they still needed to talk to the man. They followed the man to his office, while Dylan and the guard loaded the dead guard into the transport. They sat down and Roman said, "Explain." The dean told the same story again, reiterating the reason he had the lethal injections. Althea looked at him, and she said, "You literally caused that guard's death. We send a mentally ill woman to you for therapy and possibly rehabilitation, and she not only escapes once, but twice. We send guards to help control her, and she somehow gets enough privacy to fuck a sentry into being convinced into killing for her. You are seriously falling down on the job here. You said you had one go feral last year and kill 3 of your workers, and your solution is to requisition killer injections. You are a disgrace." He tried to excuse his guilt in the situation, and she told him to shut up and bring us to the sentry. They get to the jail, and they step to his cell. Roman says, "What's your name, boy?" He said, "Randy." And Roman spits back, "Well, Randy, how's it feel to be a murderer?"
Chapter 18. I don't want her. You can keep her.
"I didn't mean to kill anyone," Randy sobs. "She said she would take me with her. We were supposed to be together. I didn't know anyone would die. She looked at the syringes. She said it would just make them sleep. I didn't want anyone to die." Roman felt his heart break for this boy. He was as much a victim as the guards. He looked at this kid and felt a pinch in his chest. He asked, "How old are you, Randy?" He said, 16, sir. The same age as the other sentries. Althea swung her head around on Madden and said, 16? All your sentries are 16? What in the actual fuck is wrong with you? You have children? Kids running watch on people with mental issues? Right down to patients going feral and killing staff? How old were the 3 killed last year? Madden tried to sputter an answer, and she screamed, "Answer me now, you ass." And he said 2 women, one 21 and one 30, and a man. He was 16. She slapped him, hard, and blood trickled out of a cut on his lip. She said, "I see no evidence of you helping anyone. I see a man who grabbed onto a job for the paycheck and doesn't give a shit about neither his patients nor employees. I will expect you to tender your resignation by morning. A temporary replacement will be here by 4 o'clock today. All your sentries are to stand down until their strength and skills can be evaluated. Get out of my sight. You disgust me." He turned to Roman and said Alpha, and Roman said, "Your Luna has spoken. You have less than 30 seconds to comply." And the man practically ran out of the jail. Roman turned back to Randy. He said, "You are not being charged. I feel you are a victim. However, you will be on probation for the next 90 days. Don't fuck up again." He said, "Yes, Alpha." He spun on his heel and walked out saying, "Release him," to the guard as we left. He grabbed Althea and kissed her and said against her lips, "Hello, Althea. You have arrived. It took everything in my power not to take you right there and fuck you until you screamed." She kissed him back and said, "I probably wouldn't have stopped you," and he laughed. Caleb said, "If you two are through dry humping, think we can go home." And so they left. Back at the pack house, they sat down for lunch and Caleb was telling everyone he smelled his mate again when they came in. Roman said, "I think our underage theory is accurate. Why don't you run a check on all pack members who are about to turn 18? Maybe something will pop." He said that's actually a good idea, and Roman says it happens once in a while, Caleb. Althea laughs. Then Roman asked how all the welfare checks went. Caleb says, in general, everyone was okay, except 2 other families. One family was struggling with meeting bills and keeping food on the table because the dad had lost his job, but Caleb found a new placement for him. And the other family had a little girl with chronic breathing problems and failure to thrive, but Dee fixed that. That woman is magic, I swear. Althea busted out laughing and said, "Well, yeah, which right? Magic, double check." And everybody laughed. Caleb said, "And Kathy and her mom are back in the home. But the male is in rehab. They aren't mates, but Kathy's mom wants to be with him if he can beat his addictions. Kathy is working at the hospital with Dee, and Dee said she is doing wonderfully." Roman said, "Great follow-through on that, Caleb. Let's put a team together, preferably social workers, to perform periodic welfare checks so nobody slips through the cracks." Caleb sat on it and left, probably to take care of it. Brent came in and said not one of the sentries from the academy are capable. They have very little strength to be able to take down a full-grown wolf and have no training anyway. Roman said, "Pull the sentries back to the territory and house them in the single men's quarters. Unless they want to live at home. Set up 10 warrior trainees to replace them. The temporary dean should be arriving at the academy in about an hour. Have transport bring the sentries back then." Brent says, "On it, boss." Althea and Roman went to the office to get some paperwork done. He was signing off on payouts and utilities, while she was looking at equipment requests and repair estimates for a few cabins on the territory. She approved almost everything because she deemed them necessary. She looked up and said, "Roman, the high school science department wants a 3D printer so they can replicate a human heart. Now, I'm not sure I want to even know where they got a human heart to use as a template, and I generally am willing to supply any teaching aid they might request. But $13,000 for a printer. Surely they can find one cheaper," he said. "No, just reject it. Absolutely not." They go over the rest of the bills and requests and realize they have gotten through 2 weeks of paperwork. Feeling quite accomplished, she climbed into Roman's lap, and he wrapped her in his huge arms. Her little body completely disappeared in his arms, and she was so warm she promptly fell asleep. Caleb comes in the office a few minutes later and said there are 4 girls with birthdays this month, so he will just have to wait a while. Then he asked, "Where's Luna?" Roman moved his arm a bit and Caleb said, "Holy shit, she just disappears." And he starts laughing. Dylan comes in with Brent behind him. He says, "I got the warrior trainees set up at the academy and all the sentries are settled in. I feel sorry for those kids. Most of them took that job because it paid better than most jobs for their age. And their families need the money," Roman says. "That's fucked up. I want to know what families are struggling. I don't want kids out there working to help ends meet. They need to be in school. We need to create a program to provide aid to lower-income families. I will talk to Althea about getting it set up," Dylan says, whereas she and Roman again raises his arm, and they laugh again. Just then, the phone rang, and he hit the speaker saying, "Baron," and a voice says, "Alpha Baron," and Althea jumps up and slams the mute button. She says that's Michael. Roman says, "Are you sure?" She nods, and Roman unmutes the call. They hear, "Alpha, are you there?" And Roman says, "Yeah, bad reception." "Who is this?" Michael says, "You don't know me. You probably don't even know of me, but I know of you. I am Alpha Michael Gold of Gold Moon Pack in Nevada." Roman says, "You're right. I don't even know of you. What happened to Alpha Philip?" Michael says he met with an unfortunate accident after his daughter ran away. And Roman said, "So why are calling me?" Michael says, "It's really a shame you don't know of me, because you would know what I'm capable of." Roman said, "I don't have time for bullshit. Get to the point or hang up. I'm a busy man." Michael says, "You have something that belongs to me and I want it back. To ensure you give it to me, I will keep your Luna locked in a cage." Roman said, "Wait, what? You have my Luna in a cage?" As he's sitting right here with her in his lap. Michael says, "Yes, we caught her last night. She said she was prisoner for 2 months and escaped last night and was trying to get home to you before it was too late. She's a pretty little thing, I must say. I wouldn't mind fucking her." Roman says, "What do I supposedly have that you want?" Michael says, "The red wolf. And don't deny it. She was seen running on your land." Roman says, "So the deal is the red wolf for my Luna?" Michael says, "Yes, absolutely." And Roman says, "No." Michael says, "What do you mean?" And Roman says, "I mean no. I don't want her. You can keep her," and hung up the phone.
Chapter 19, Barbies and Questions, Althea's POV.
As we sit here, in the office, in the silence that followed that strange phone call, we just stare at each other. Finally, Dylan looks up and says, "He was talking about Sydney, right?" And that was all it took. Every single one of us lost it. It was, most likely, an extremely dangerous situation for her. But damn, she went from the frying pan into the fire. I said, "Okay, let's look at this logically. We assume Michael has Sydney, and he somehow believes she is your mate, and he wants to trade her for me. So, how did he find Sydney? Are they somehow connected? I mean, they are both certifiably insane. Do crazy people just gravitate towards each other? Where did he find her? Does he have people close enough to be watching our pack? No, if that were true, he would know I am Luna and Sydney is as crazy as a soup sandwich. So did she stumble into one of his lackeys who took a liking to her, and she played the Luna card to try and get herself out of a sticky situation. But that still leaves the coincidence of the whole situation. I have to talk to Aunt D."
Back to third-person POV.
The guys sat there looking at the door she had just stormed out of. Caleb looked at the door, back at Roman, then at the door, and said, "The fuck was that? She just rattled off a bunch of crap and stormed out?" And Roman said, "She'll be back. She's processing." And the Dylan said, "I just don't get why she doesn't just poof herself where she wants to go and poof back. She's a witch, right? Can't all witches poof? Roman looked at him for a long minute, wondering why it never occurred to him that Dylan seems to be 3 bricks shy of a load sometimes. He said, Althea is a fire witch, and while she has many gifts, teleportation isn't one of them. Dylan nods and says, oh, like he was just given the answers to the universe. Roman says, Caleb, can we access the video surveillance at the academy? I wasn't concerned about what happened before because it seemed pretty self-explanatory. But now I am questioning a few things. Look into Dean Madden's background. He seemed a decent enough man, but he was one of my father's hires, and I really never questioned it. He certainly was a little off-center yesterday. He has always presented a confident and intelligent persona, but maybe that's all it is. A persona. I think we should detain him. Maybe do a little interrogation. Brent linked the guards at the academy and told them to bring Madden to the pack house. Roman said, Althea is right. This all seems to be too much of a coincidence. Too many pieces aren't fitting together. And the only one I believe about the whole scenario is a 16-year-old kid with a broken heart. He stood up and said, let's move into the conference room, or we can all look at the security tapes on the TV in there. If we all choose a different camera feed, maybe one of us will spot something crucial. He linked John and Neil, asking for a meeting in conference. Althea and Dedra were walking back toward the office when they met up with Neil, who told them everyone was in the conference room. They all walked in together. Roman looks at the group of people he has come to look at as his closest family and smiled. Good people. He has been blessed. Althea walked over and climbed into Roman's lap, and he whispered, all better? And she nodded. Roman explained the situation, as they know it. And they know very little. Roman said, by getting his hands on Sydney, Michael assumed he had leverage. Shit. I would have paid him to take her. But here we are. John, can you get some trackers close to Golden Moon safely? It could be dangerous, as he's been building an army, and I don't want to jeopardize any of our men. Caleb turned and said video feeds coming online as he pulled the 70-inch projection screen down. Neil whistled low and said nice. Caleb divided the 8 camera feeds on the screen. The cameras were strategically placed to show all critical points at the academy. The last one being the dean's office. Roman looked at the screen and said, eliminate the cafeteria feed. It's too occupied and wide open for anything nefarious to happen. We all choose a camera feed and see what we can see, Caleb said. How far back do I go? I mean, what day should we start watching from? Roman said, go back to the day our girls arrived. I realize that's a lot of time to cover, but we need to know when first contact occurred, if contact occurred, and we need to do our due diligence. John spoke up and said, I just sent 2 of our best to scope out Golden Moon. Made sure to tell them to have their SATCOM phones on them and their location beacons. Roman nodded. Caleb said, the feed is ready to start. Althea linked Martha to ask her to arrange snacks and coffee. It was going to be a long day. Roman passed out pads and pens saying, write down anything you think looks suspicious, no matter how trivial. Then we can all compare notes. At any time you need the feed rewound, just speak up. And Caleb rolled video. They all got comfortable and started watching. About 45 minutes later, Martha brought a tray with snacks and coffee and bottled water. They had reached the date Sydney was admitted. They watched her yell at the dean and trash his office. Althea said, is there sound? Can we hear what they're saying? Caleb punched a few buttons, and we heard, well, I don't care about your mate. You better tell him to get me out of here if he wants Sioux River, Roman said. Back that up to when she walked in, and he went back to Sydney's arrival. Normal conversation until the dean said, what did you do to land you here? It makes you singularly useless at this point. She jumped up and spewed a bunch of nonsense about that new witch in town trying to usurp her position as Luna, and a lot of blustering about getting even. He tried to placate her and calm her down. He said, "Well, in this report, it says you attacked 2 people in front of the Alpha. What did you think was going to happen?" She yelled. "Happen? What did I think would happen? I assumed he would have my back. I am Luna, damn it, and entitled to the privileges. As such," he said. "Well, you are stuck here for 6 months, and there's nothing I can do about it." She started throwing things and yelled. "You better figure it out and make a few phone calls," he said. "My hands are tied. He has my mate. Goddess damn it. I can't help you when I can't help my mate. What do you expect me to do?" And she repeated what we had already heard. She was escorted to her quarters after that, and as we watched the dean, he sat down and put his head in his hands. After several moments, they saw his shoulders shaking and heard a sob. Caleb paused the feeds and looked around the room. Well, that was interesting. Just then a knock at the door alerted them to the dean's arrival. Althea smiled and said, "Hello again, Dean. Have a seat. We want to talk about Barbie. We have questions."
Chapter 20, A Traitor by Default.
Madden cleared his throat. He had a fine sheen of sweat on his forehead, definitely nervous. He said, "I have already told you what I know. I'm not sure how I can help." Roman looked at him and said, "Sit down." And he plopped in a chair so fast Althea giggled. Roman said, "How do you know Sydney?" He said, "I don't." Roman said, "Oh, I think you do, and I think you want to tell me about it." The dean looked up and said, "Her mother is my mate's cousin. They don't get along, and my mate has no contact with her family. But Sydney walked into a diner over in Monroe with a couple other girls. My mate and I were headed south for a funeral of an old college colleague of mine and had stopped for a bite to eat. My mate recognized her because she looks exactly like her mother. She seemed pleasant enough, told us she was going to be Luna soon. Her brother is the Gamma in our pack. Normal conversation. I mean, she's family, and my mate doesn't have much of that. We talked about my job, how I deal with the problem children of the pack. Connie was happy to hear about her cousins. Everything seemed fine. Then 5 men walked in, robes by the smell, and walked right up to Sydney. One of the men spoke directly to her, and from the gist of the conversation, it seemed sexual in nature. We said our goodbyes and paid our tab. As we walked out, 4 of the men followed us. One of them grabbed Connie, and when I tried to get to her, they beat the hell out of me. I was laying in the parking lot, and the first man walked out of the diner to me and kicked me in the face. He squatted down in front of me and said, "Your mate is going to be a guest at our facility for a while. Our boss will contact you, should he feel you have information he needs. Cooperation is key. As long as you do what he wants, your mate remains alive." And they threw her in the back of a black SUV and took off. Sydney walked over and said, "Just do what they want. They won't hurt her." He started to cry, he said. That was almost 2 months ago. I haven't heard from her since. I don't know where she is. I don't know how she is. I don't even know who has her. The only contact I have had with anyone was one phone call. One damned phone call. Around 7 in the morning day before yesterday, I answered my phone and a man's voice said, "Sydney escapes tonight. No interference." And he hung up. There was nothing I could do. There is still nothing I can do. I have never felt so helpless in my life. And he broke down sobbing. They all just sat there a few minutes. Eventually, Roman spoke. "Well, that gives me more questions than answers. It all seems too coincidental, and I don't believe in coincidences. I have a lot of brainstorming to do right now with my circle. As of this moment, you are not under arrest. You are being detained. I don't believe you are guilty of treason, but you are a traitor by default, and you are confined to your home unless you are accompanied by a guard. You're dismissed." Dedra spoke us and said, "Alpha, if I have something that belongs to Connie, I could astral project to her location. I might be able to see something," Althea said. "No, it's dangerous." "You project?" and you get too caught up in that alternate reality. You lose track of time, and last time it took me 3 days to bring you back. So no, just no. Roman wrapped her in his arms and sat down with her in his lap, whispering shhhhh over and over. He said, Madden, send something over here of Connie's. We are going to put a pin in this projection thing and only consider Ott as a last resort. But at least we can be prepared. And the dean said, Yes, Alpha. And for what it's worth, I am so ashamed and so very sorry. Roman just nodded. He leaned down to kiss Althea's forehead and realized she was sleeping. Neil said, Dee Dee, baby, I'm not okay about this astral projection thing. If you get stuck, I could lose you. And I waited so long for you, I can't live without you. She smiled and climbed into his lap and said, It is perfectly safe, as long as there is no other witch around. They can spot a projection. And that's what happened when Munchkin had to save me. Luckily, she has the gift of dream walking, or I could have been stuck for a long time. She was only 9, though, and I didn't realize it scarred her so deeply. That hurts my heart. She's been my only love for so long that I sometimes forget she can be fragile too. She is fierce and strong, determined and adamant, but she's soft, so very fragile about the people she loves. I will table this discussion for a later time, and we can revisit it if our options are running out. And they started watching the video feed again. They had run through a week or so, showed the day the dean first called about Sydney's escape attempt, showed her killing the therapist with a potted plant in her office, and Sydney shifting to her wolf and jumping through the window. Every so often, Althea whimpered. Dee said she's dreaming, and if she's whimpering, it's not a good one. A little further in the video, they see a man dressed all in black and wearing a hoodie sneak into the West Wing. That's the residential ward. He crept down the hallway and knocked on Sydney's door. He entered and was in there about 2 hours and snuck out again. They lost sight of him as he shifted and jumped the back fence. They looked at each other in awe. That fence is 8 feet tall. All of a sudden, bubbles, floating bubbles, all around the room. Each bubble held a flame, burning brightly, and every time a bubble popped, the flame was extinguished and embers drifted to the floor. Dylan said, Well, that's different. Cool as fuck. But different, Dee said. She's dreaming and she's angry. Her subconscious is protecting everyone with the bubbles. It's her way of not burning the world down. Suddenly, they saw lightning flash outside and rapid. Loud thunder rolled through the air, and the skies opened up to a torrential downpour, with lightning popping everywhere. Dee said, Correction, she is very angry. And they all laughed. Roman said, Well, we may as well keep watching video until she wakes up and can tell her what has her this upset. Caleb looks at him and says, You are never surprised when something odd as hell happens with her, are you? He shrugs and says, We had 2 months. 2 months of just Kaises. We talked a lot, and she showed me her gifts. It was enlightening, and everyone laughed.
Chapter 21, Dream Murders. Althea's POV.
I'm walking in a field of daffodils, an amazing field of yellow with the sun on my face. They are my mom's favorite flowers. My mom. I spin in a circle. I call out, Mom. I hear her sweet tinkling laugh, and before she can utter a word, I am flying towards her and into her arms. She hugs me tight and said, Oh, my munchkin, how I miss you, kissing me all over my face like she did when I was a child. I hear my dad say, Hey, what about me? Where are my snuggles? And I leapt at him. I am so happy. I am with my mom and dad, and my heart is singing, Sit with us, munchkin. We have a lot to talk about, my mom says. So I sit, and my dad pulls out a picnic basket with all my favorite foods. He had pizza and lasagna. He had strawberries and cheesecake. Hot chocolate, yummy. My mom looks at me and begins to speak. When I was a teenager, I started my first day of school at Gold Moon High School. Everyone knew I was human. I hid the fact I was a witch. I was a freshman and a bit of a nerd. At lunchtime, I sat alone at a corner table, reading a book. Nobody noticed me. No one bothered me. I was eating an apple when the outside doors opened up. In walked three gods, the most beautiful boys I had ever seen. The one in the middle stood taller than the other two, and I knew in an instant he was my chosen. A witch doesn't have a mate, per se. We won't wither away if we aren't with our chosen. We feel the pull, the want, but love has to build for us. This Admus marches straight to my table and leans down. He says, "Stay away from me. I don't want or need a human mate." And I sat back and smiled at him and simply said, "Okay, but when you change your mind, better hope I'm still available." And oh ho, he didn't like that a bit. He punched the table and said, "Remember what I said?" And again I smiled and said, "You too." And he walked away from me. It hurt. Man, did it hurt. The tear droned on. I made friends. I went out. I learned my chosen was a junior and captain of the football team. But I also learned he was the alpha, to be of the Golden Moon Pack. Philip Gold, my chosen. He was everywhere. I couldn't turn a corner that I didn't see him, and my feelings were growing. My heart hurt all the time. But I acted happy. I acted like I wasn't bothered. School let out for the summer, and a new boy joined our group of friends. He was cute. He was sweet. And he was funny. And he wanted to date me. I told him no, that I didn't want to be in a relationship. He hung out with us all summer. And in the fall, he enrolled in our school. When I asked where he lived, he was always vague. He was vague about nearly everything. He would follow me around. He was always finding reasons to touch me. He began to torment and bully other students. He would make fun of this one kid habitually. I befriended that kid. I felt so bad for him. Nathan got so mad at me, said I was undermining him and risking his reputation, told me I was his, and he wouldn't stand for it. I pushed him away, and he slapped me. Philip saw it and beat the hell out of him. Nathan wasn't in school for a week. In that time, Philip had started talking to me. He asked for forgiveness and a second chance, so I was already half in love with him and said yes. We spent that first week just getting to know one another. I told him I was a witch, but to protect myself, I didn't let anyone know. He said keeping it a secret would be a smart strategy. When Nathan showed back up at school, I told him I didn't want to see him anymore. I was with Philip, and I had nothing more to say. He went crazy. He destroyed the library and was expelled from school. The next few years, we would see him, hanging out at the diner. He would show up at parties. We found out he was the alpha of a little pack called Mountain Ridge. My senior year, Philip ascended to alpha, and we started planning my lunar ceremony. The night before my ceremony, my girls and I went to town to pick up my gown. We had heard Nathan had met his mate a few months back, and she was expecting a baby. I was so relieved. He had seriously started to give me the creeps. As we girls were leaving the boutique, we were grabbed and thrown into a car. We woke up in cells, somewhere underground. 3 days went by. We hadn't seen a soul. No food. No water. On the 4th day, we heard footsteps, and I looked up into the malicious eyes of Nathan Hawthorne. He said, "I told you. You are mine." I felt an intense amount of anger. My mother was abducted. My dad picked up the story. Once we got word of the kidnapping, I had paws on the ground. We picked up scents of Mountain Ridge wolves. I sent trackers out to scout their pack, but we kept coming up empty. Finally, on the 5th day, one of the trackers caught sight of Nathan. He seemed to be heading off Packlands and was acting suspicious. The tracker followed him. He saw him enter a small shed just off their southern border and mind-linked me. He thought he had found where my Luna was. I told him to sit tight, and we would meet him. I got there about 45 minutes later. I had 9 warriors with me. We had been there about an hour when in saw Nathan come out. He was covered in blood. He left a guard on the door as he shifted and ran back to his pack. I stormed the shed, killing the guard. I ran in and opened a little door. There were stairs leading down to what I could only describe as a dungeon, and there was my beautiful mate, hung in chains and beaten nearly to death. I felt such a burning anger. I was sweating. I whimpered and wanted to hurt someone. My dad continued. I was so furious. I called our warriors to meet me, while I sent the girls back to the infirmary with the trackers. And I headed directly onto Mountain Ridge Packlands and killed anyone in my path. I challenged Nathan for his title with every intention of killing him. He submitted almost immediately and ran, like the coward he is. I now had a second alpha title I didn't want. I disbanded his pack and found places for his people to go. My mom picked up the story. I healed and we had our ceremony. 2 years later, you came along. Fast forward 14 years. I was out gathering herbs for poultices and a huge brown wolf charged me. I barely had time to link your dad before I drew my last breath. My dad says, I arrived and saw her lying there, her chest and throat ripped apart, and I howled. I howled and sobbed and wanted to die. I felt such intense anger my head began to pound. I had tears streaming down my face. My dad continued, I had to pull myself together. I had you to think about, and I couldn't disappoint your mother. I got it part way together and life moved on. I met Anna, and she seemed a sweet woman with a son, a few years older than you. I married her, legally, but I never marked her. One night, we were drinking wine and enjoying time together, I thought. The next morning, I woke up groggy. Not myself. I couldn't feel Alec. I called to him, but he didn't answer, and I realized I must have been dosed with wolfsbane. That is when I was called to the courtyard and Michael challenged me. We fought, and it got bloody, but I didn't have my wolf. So when he shifted, he ripped my throat out before I had a chance to defend myself. As I lay dying, he said, my father took your wife, and I took your life. Lightning crashed all around us. The wind picked up and rain came down. I sat straight up in Roman's lap and said, I know who murdered my parents.
Chapter 22. Love Me Like You Do.
Althea was struggling. Her anger was festering, and she knew she needed an outlet, a release of energy. She went in search of Roman and found him in the war room. It has been nearly 2 weeks since her parents had visited her. Roman decided they were going on the offensive. They would no longer sit and wait for an attack. They had no idea when it would occur. Althea had drawn a perfect map of Golden Moon, every safe room, every outbuilding. It was perfect for lining up their strategy. Roman reached out and pulled Althea in close, hugging her tightly. He whispered, Why so tense, baby? She said, I need to run. He grinned and said, See you later, boys. My mate wants to run. And they took off out the back doors. They leaped off the porch and shifted before they hit the ground. They ran around trees, leaping over fallen logs, darted under thickets and over bushes. He led her to the little stream they had gone to the night of their mating. They played in the water for a while, and she shifted. She walked over to Ambrose and kised his snout. She said, I'm frustrated, Ambrose. I want to kill them. All of them. And I want them dead last week. I am angry, and I don't know where to put it. She jumped up and exploded a tree into flame. Roman shifted and pulled her to him and wrapped her in his arms. He said, We will go soon. Another week, and we will have all our players in place. I know you are frustrated and angry, and you will get your vengeance. You will avenge the murders of your parents, and I will be by your side every step of the way. But right now, in this moment, I am going to fuck you, and I'm not going to be gentle. You don't need gentle. You need to work out your frustrations, and I am going to help you. He backed her into a tree and kised her. A long, hard, deep kiss that slicked her pissy with need. He lifted her and forced her up against the tree as he pushed himself inside of her hard. She gasped and then moaned. She said, "Move." And move he did. He started pounding into her and sucked a nipple into his mouth, biting hard, then soothing it with his tongue. She was moaning his name and saying harder, faster, and he was more than happy to accommodate her. He pulled out and stepped back. He pushed her to her knees, and she opened her mouth, taking his entire length into her throat. He groaned, "Goddess baby, that feels amazing." She pulled back, twirling her tongue around the tip. She brought her hand up and wrapped around his length, pumping her hand to the rhythm of her head, bobbing up and down his magnificent cock. Using her other hand, she squeezed and rolled and tugged his balls, speeding up her pace. He grabbed a handful of hair and fuked her face. She gagged and choked, loving every second of this. It was wild and rough and animalistic, and it was amazing. He jerked his cock out of her mouth and forced her down on all fours. He slammed into her from behind and growled so loud the ground shook, and set a fast pace, pounding her so hard he knew she was going to be sore. He leaned forward and reached his hand to her clit, rubbing it roughly back and forth until he felt her walls clenching around his cock, and he growled, "CM for me, baby." And she did, tightening around him even more. She screamed his name over and over, and he roared out his climax. They laid there a few minutes and came down from the stars. He pulled out of her, and she giggled. "Well, I'm sticky." And he chuckled. He lifted her and walked into the stream. She floated onto her back and whispered, "This is the life." He swam over to her and pulled her back into his arms. She opened her eyes and smiled at him. He said, "Oh, did you think we were finished?" And her eyes grew wide as he entered her again. They made love 4 more times, and we lying in the grass beside the stream. She sighed and leaned to kiss his chest. He asked in his deep SXY voice, "Did that help with your anger, my love?" And she said, "I am never angry or frustrated when you love me like you do." And he kissed her soundly. They laid there another couple hours, talking about their lives and their future. She was happy. She could feel everything that had been upsetting her floating away. She loved this man. He knew her better than anyone. He knew what she needed before she did, and he knew exactly how to go about repairing her tattered heart. The goddess sure got this one right. He looked down at her beautiful face and saw the tension around her eyes was gone. Her forehead was no longer furrowed with worry. Goddess, how he loves her. He is determined to end this threat and keep her safe. He wants to see her grow round with his baby. He can't wait to have a little girl with curly red hair charging at him calling daddy. This woman owned him. She consumed his heart. How he ever thought he could stay away from her was beyond him. She was his home. He stood up and pulled her to her feet. She gasped and her knees buckled. He laughed and said, "Good dacking down." She laughed and said, "The best on record." And he laughed harder. She said, "I'm going to be limping for a week." And he held his sides, laughing so hard. They headed back to the pack house, taking a while because she wasn't feeling able to run. He kept chuckling at her through their link, and she called him a dackhead, which caused him to laugh harder. They reached home in time for dinner, and Martha told her there was cheesecake, and she said, "This day just gets better and better." They were all sitting around catching up and enjoying the evening, until patrol came through the link saying there was a note left on the south border. Roman linked back any sign of who left it, any scent, and the response was no alpha, so he told them to bring the note to him in the war room, and they all walked down the hall to be there when the warrior showed up. They were discussing strategies and positioning when the warrior walked in and handed the note to Roman. He read it out loud to the group. "You have 1 week. 1 week to deliver the red wolf or your Luna dies." And Althea laughed so hard she fell off Roman's lap.
Chapter 23, Astral Projection.
They all sat there, knowing their time has come to prepare for war. They would pull out in 2 days. Dedra said, "Munchkin." I am going to project. I know you don't want me to. But can you trust me enough to know I will always come back? Althea tears up and says in a small voice, "Don't make me come get you." Dee said, "I will do short bursts into different areas. It will help us to know what we are facing. Roman, will you ask Mr. Bradmadden to bring a picture of Connie and to join us? In case she has a message for him." He nodded and linked the dean. They all waited and Althea said, "We need a large room with a cot for Aunt Dee to lie on. I have to prepare the room. I have to ward all points of entry, just in case they have a witch. I doubt they do. But even if they do, we are stronger. I will prepare tea while the room is set up." And she walked out to head to the kitchen after detouring to get the herbs she needs. When Roman had removed the table from the conference room and got the cot set up, Neil burst into the room and straight to Dee. He begged her to be safe, and she promised she would. Althea walked back into the room. She set her candles around the cot in a pentagram shape. Then she lit a sprig of sage and asked Dee to lie down, telling everyone to take a seat, and they needed complete silence, talking through links only. She then took the sage and ran its smoke around each window and door, smudging as she went. She walked over to her aunt and handed her the tea. Dee drank all of it and laid out prone on the cot. Althea handed her the photo and a shirt of Connie's. She began a slow, low chant and saw Dee's eyes droop.
Dedra's POV.
I opened my eyes and I was sitting outside a cell. I looked around and saw 13, maybe 14 people in here. I saw Connie and she looks bad. She has been beaten, and from the angle of her leg, I would say it's broken. I reached her and whispered, "Connie." Knowing she can't see me, I whispered hurriedly, "I am from your pack. I can heal you internally, but I will leave your bruises so no one knows. But I will take your pain away." I healed her leg, and she had a tear in her spleen, and then I touched her forehead, and she fell asleep. I shook my head and stepped into the packlands. I looked around at the people and felt my heart break. Every single woman I spotted had bruises someplace. There was such an air of defeat around them. It was painful to see. I got to the training grounds, but I didn't see anyone training, just standing around and talking. They were laughing and talking about the Red Wolf. Every time a woman came anywhere near the men, they cowered in fear. I estimated about 300 fighters. Piece of cake for Roman. And I chuckled. I lapsed back into my body and opened my eyes. I told Roman what I had seen, and then asked for something of Sydney's because I didn't see any sign of her. Dylan raced out of the room. I said we would need several medical transports for the women, probably the RVS as well. He said we will get everything ready. And when Dylan was back, he handed me a blouse of Sydney's, and I allowed myself to be pulled back under. I opened my eyes and I was in Philip's office. I thought, why am I in here? There's no Sydney. And just then the door flew open, and there she was. She doesn't look like she did before. Not as put together. Her roots had grown out. Her nails weren't done. She just looked dirty. Michael had her bent over his desk and yanked her skirt up, pulling her panties to the side, and unzipped his pants as I darted into the hall. Just you, Uwa. I wandered down the hallway, peeking my head through doors, seeing various degrees of SX. Mostly forceful. I went to the Alpha's quarters and popped in. There sat Anna naked, talking to Nathan lying naked in the bed. Hun. All in the family, I suppose. I walked around the room while I listened. Their plan is to kill Roman because they want his pack. That's a joke. But when I heard Anna mention Althea, he said you can forget about her. I plan on mating that little half-breed. She said you would finally mate me. And Michael could have her? He said, woman, you are old. I want a son from the Red Wolf. You belong to Michael. He has mommy issues, and he snickered. Well, I am officially grossed out. Just as I was walking out the door, Nathan sat bolt upright. He said, do you feel that? Anna said, what? He snarled, witch. and I popped straight up on the cot, trying to catch my breath. Althea ran over to me and hugged me tight. I said I don't know how and I don't know why, but Nathan sensed me. I almost got caught. Phew. I proceeded to tell them everything I had seen. I told them the entire pack looked malnourished. There was no food in the kitchen. The women are being raped. Anna is fuking Nathan. Sydney is fuking Michael, and both men believe Althea is unmated, and they both have reasons for wanting her. It's a perfect recipe for disaster. Roman asked me about defenses, and I said I didn't make it out to the borders, but if training was any indication, I doubted it was patrolled well. I did see their weapons. It was hard not to. They were spread out in the living room. They have wolfsbane darts and arrows with silver heads. I said I will make some potions to ward off the effects of both. It will slow our warriors down, but they will maintain the ability to summon their wolves. Althea said she will help because she wants to make scent hiding tonics. Roman said we are better armed, stronger, more disciplined, and more numbers. We will prevail, failure being no option. So we set about getting everything ready tomorrow to leave the next day.
Chapter 24. Plan in place.
Roman stood in the middle of the compound, supervising all the preparations. He made sure his archers and snipers were geared up. Althea and Dee were finishing up their potions and tonics. Everyone will drink them 20 miles from the borders of Golden Moon. Our warriors will be coming from all 4 sides. Dylan and Brent will stay behind, keeping the home fires burning. They are taking half their fighting force with them, leaving enough at home to defend, in case of anything. Roman refuses to take any chances. These are rogues. They have no morals, no loyalty, only a driving desire to destroy. Sioux River is hallowed ground, and anyone who dare desecrate it will perish. But he doubts an attack will happen from these pathetic rogues. Roman has 3 medical buses and 3 RVS. They plan to offer to find placements for all the women if they have nowhere to return to. Althea wants to bring them home, but that discussion was tabled until after the battle. Dedra had checked and rechecked the medical buses for bandages and suture kits, antiseptics, and antibiotics. Roman installed an X-ray machine so she doesn't have to use magic on everyone. That much always wears the girls out. He admires both witches so much. They are powerful, but they don't exploit it, only using it when necessary. But they never hesitate to help someone in need. Althea wears her magic proudly, and it sure looks good on her. He loves how she is proud, but not prideful. She never boasts about what she can do. She just does it. She doesn't threaten. She just does it. Like when she beat Sydney's ass. That was great, he chuckles. He watches the preparations with pride. His pack never ceases to amaze him. He links everyone and told them meeting in the back in 15 minutes. He turns and his breath catches. There she is, wearing an adorable mint green sundress, with the morning sun framing her mad red hair like a halo. She smiles at him, and he winks. All is right in their world once more. He walks to her and takes her hand, leading her to the backyard. They mount the stage, and he steps to the podium. Roman clears his throat and speaks. Sioux River, I stand before you a proud man. The reason for my pride stands before me, and right beside me with a wink my pack, my family, my heart. Tomorrow we ride into battle. Tomorrow I ask my family to put their lives on the line to right a wrong, to mete out justice for not 1, but 2 heinous murders. Our Luna lost both her parents to the now wannabe Alpha and Beta of Golden Moon. And every one of you has declared your devotion to her, and to one of our own. He dropped to his knee, placing his fist over his heart, and I declare my devotion to you. And the crowd went wild. Althea stood with tears flowing down her face. Linking, I said it once, and I'll say it again, the goddess got this one right. I love you. He turned his head and winked. Standing up, he walked over to her and took her hand, walked her to the very front of the stage, and putting his hands on her shoulders, yelled, Our Luna, just to get the crowd going again. Back in the war room, they were going over plans and making sure everyone knew their positions. Any changes this late in the game could spell disaster. Roman and his circle, now including John and Neil, were to be in 2 armored SUVs and crash through the north gates and drive to the pack house. There was to be 90 wolves on paws running with them. At the same time, all 3 borders would be breached, with 100 warriors each. Roman wasn't taking any chances with his beauty. This ends tomorrow night, so their life could begin. Dedra would stay with the vehicles and 25 men to catch anyone who escapes. Our plan is to secure and detain, but killing isn't off the table, especially if it's us or them. Althea is focusing on Michael and Sydney each with their own offenses in her mind, so isn't sharing how she plans on apprehending them. She just says she has something special planned, especially the traitor. Roman just smiles at her. He wasn't crazy about her going after 2 people alone, but he has faith in her ability. She has even sparred with him. Caleb would be hacking into the cameras around the pack house to monitor where people were running, mostly because Althea asked him to. She knows Michael will run and Sydney will hide. She wants Caleb to tell her what room they run to. She knows everything about that place, so Roman has absolute faith in her. They called it a night because 4 a.m. comes early. Althea and Roman had finally gotten laid down, and she whispered, "Don't worry, we will be fine," and she fell asleep. He laid there wide awake. "We will be fine. We will be fine. Is she a we? Oh hell no, she's not going into battle. No fucking way." And then he sighs. He can't stop her, and he knows it. He will just keep a closer eye on her. That means kill Nathan Hawthorne in under 5 minutes. It's doable. No problem. It's 3:45, and that fucking beeping pissed her off. She slapped her hand down on top of the alarm clock and rolled over the top PF Roman to get out of his side of the bed. He laughed at her and said, "What was that?" She just shrugged and ran to the bathroom, giving him a glimpse of her perfect ass. He jumped up and followed her in. They had to rush to get dressed because, well, naked shower together, and he stood stock still. She was dressed in black cargo pants, combat boots with a long-sleeved turtleneck, and a black leather jacket. Her katana on her back. He walked straight to her and said, "That is the hottest outfit you own. Only ever dress like this," and kissed her hard enough to curl her toes. And she giggled. They went to load up in their vehicles, and Martha handed Althea a go-cup filled with coffee. She thanked her and got in the SUV and buckled up. Roman got in the driver's seat, and they settled in for a 12-hour drive.
Chapter 25, If It Ain't My Brother.
They stopped at a restaurant to have a hot meal. They were over sandwiches for now. Althea said, "How close are we?" Caleb said, "About an hour. But we will waste a couple hours here. That way we can roll up on the gate at 8 as planned." She leaned over and took Dee's hand and whispered, "Please be safe. Let the warriors do their job. That is to protect you. Promise me." "You promise, and I know you won't break it." Dee smiled at her and patted her hand, saying she promised. They ordered food and sat around laughing and enjoyed the calm before the storm. Roman and Caleb kept a close watch for rogues. They didn't need word getting out this close to the finish line. It was time to leave, and they were back on the road. Althea pulled her hair up in a messy bun and put a black ski cap on her head. Roman just smiled at her. They held hands, and as the gates showed about a mile away and Roman gunned the truck and hit it doing 70 mph, and the gates exploded, and at least 5 men flew a good 100 feet. Nearly 100 wolves followed both vehicles into Packlands. At the same time, all the borders were breached and small skirmishes broke out, but no one died yet. It was like a ghost town. It was quiet and eerie. And then you heard it. Wolves running from the training room, apparently. It was a night to party. As the wolves rounded the side of the house, a brown wolf leaped at Roman, and he shifted before the wolf reached him. He linked Althea go, and she headed up the steps. Neil and John were heading to the cells when two women ran towards them saying, "Please, our mates are down there." And they said, "Follow is." Roman squared off against the brown wolf. He tilted his head and pushed into the mind of that bastard. Bless the sharing of power from her red wolf. He leaned hard into the brown wolf's brain and snarled, "Does it make you a man to kill an innocent human woman with no way to defend herself?" Nathan said, "Who is this?" Nathan lunged at him, and Roman sidestepped him and pulled deep gashes down his side, and Nathan faltered. Roman said, Me, I'm nobody. My mate though, she's something." And Nathan lunged again, and Roman latched into his throat with his teeth, and he said, "My mate is the red wolf." And Nathan started struggling under Ambrose's massive jaw, and Roman growled, "Submit." He waited. Nathan tried to get his claws under Roman's belly, and Roman snapped his neck. He turned and made sure his pack was okay. He ran up the front steps and entered the house and began a search for his love. He saw a dead rogue hanging off the staircase banister. He thinks, "Yep, she went this way." Althea walked into the house and stood looking around. She listened. She could hear scurrying above her head, and she smirks, hitting the stairs two at a time. Halfway up, a rogue tried to stop her, and she didn't have time for this. She whipped her katana off her back and cut his throat. He fell over the banister and slid down it. "Hun, pretty cool," she linked Caleb. "Did they enter the fourth door on the left?" He responded affirmative, and she grinned evilly. "She says my daddy's office." She walked slowly to give them enough time to lock themselves in the panic room. They were her prisoners then. She could hear them. Almost there. She heard noises coming up the stairs and got battle ready, only to see Roman walking towards her. She held a finger to her lips and pointed to the door over her shoulder. She linked, "Everyone okay with our people?" He said back, "Maybe a dozen minor injuries. When I came in, it was probably 90% contained." She squealed into the link, and he winced. Then they heard Luna, and she realizes her pack link is wide open and giggles. She opened the door to her father's office, and tears stung her eyes, and she staggered. Roman pulled her close and whipped, "I got you." She took a moment, then walked into the room. She sat down at her father's desk and reached into the top left drawer and turned her hand palm up to reach the monitor system for the safe room. Roman said, "Nice." Immediately a screen comes up with the safe room showing, and she hit the volume so they can hear what's being said. Roman asks Caleb about containment and is informed 100% alpha. Roman told him to bring the circle to Luna's father's office. There's something good on TV. Everybody was laughing, listening. Sydney said, "If it's Ro, he's here to rescue me, so we are safe." Anna says, "You delusional bitch. They are here to kill us because of what dumbass over here and his father did. You're just a traitor." And Sydney yelled back, "Well, at least I wasn't sleeping with both the father and son." Anna slapped her and said, "Yes, you are, you fucking bimbo. Who do you think Nathan is? Goddess, you are stupid. At least I know Michael didn't fuck you for your brain. But it doesn't matter. Any Tom's Harry Dack will do, sounds about right. Everyone in the office were dying. This is comedic gold. A DVD is going home with her for the pack's enjoyment." Althea asked Caleb to round up the warriors and help distribute food products to the refugees. She ran downstairs to the pantry and bit her hand. One little drop of blood can feed a nation. She giggled and ran back upstairs. Roman pulled her into his lap. Always thinking about the people. A true Luna. Althea listened in again. This time it's Michael talking. He says, "Dad is dead, so it's probably Roman. That stupid dad," and taunting him about his Luna. "That bitch is no more a Luna than you are. Who gives a fuck about that no-good half-breed red wolf anyway? No guarantee she'd even birth a wolf anyway, being half-human." Anna screamed. "You do. You give a fuck. She is all you have talked about since she was 15. You stupid bastard. You started it. How do we get out of here? I'm ready to surrender." And Michael says, "I have no idea. but I will figure it out. Anna is screaming again. You have no idea. No idea. You locked us in a room. You have no idea how to unlock. Oh, goddess, I'm going to die in here. No one will find us. I'm going to starve to death, Michael, and it's your fault. Outside in the office, Althea is rolling on the floor laughing so hard she's crying, and Caleb said they can't get out. She shakes her head no. They're stuck in there. And she nods. Roman says watch. Althea pulled up a tablet and looks at Roman. Watch top left corner of the screen, and you'll see me. She punches in keys on the tablet. They see her face on the screen in the panic room. They haven't noticed yet. She says, ahem. And all eyes turn to her. She says, well, if it ain't my brother. And oh hey, mummy dearest. What's happening, fake Barbie? Damn girl. What happened to your hair? She sneers and says, fuck you. And Althea gasps and says, is that any way to talk to the only person who can get you out of that little sweat box?
Chapter 26. Execution would be my vote.
Althea stood waiting. The three in the panic room, well panicked. It was fun to watch. Michael looked at the monitor and said, what will it take to negotiate my release? And the girls jumped him for not asking for their release too. Althea blew a kiss to Roman over her shoulder and said, this is going to be a long night. So happy Aunt Dee is cooking us some food. He laughed and said, I am so fucking proud of you. She heard Michael saying he was talking to her. She deadpans, I was deciding what I would take in exchange for all three of yours release. Michael says, well, what do you want? She smiles sweetly and says, why nothing, dear brother. Nothing but your complete unconditional surrender. You are now my prisoners. He screams over my dead body. And she snarls back, that's the point, bozo. And the circle cracked up. They went back and forth for 3 hours, and she got fed up. His arguments were ignorant. He knew he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He was just being obstinate. She snarled into the monitor and said, enough, you fuck. The only way out of that damned room is me. My father designed everything that way. Just in case what happened happened. Smart man, my dad. Couldn't access a thing, could you? Now, we can do this the easy way and step out one at a time and get cuffed. Or we can do it the really hard and painful way. I will pull your wolf forward and command you to stand down. And that hurts like a bitch. Those are your choices. What's it gonna be? He says, you can't pull my wolf. I am alpha, a weak alpha. But you keep telling yourself that, bucko, she says. Then she said, last chance, girls. Should you stay or should you go now? Prisoner or starve to death? Tick-tock. They both said I surrender at the same time. Michael? Easy way or hard? He growls hard. And she smiles and says, oh goody. And Roman laughed. She walked over to the access panel and bit her hand and places it flat against it. And when she lifted it, it was healed. She tapped in a few numbers and the door slid open. Caleb said, what the fuck? And Roman explained it. Caleb said, I want to do that at home. Althea stood a little left of the door in case Michael darted forward and Roman and Caleb flanked her. Sydney stepped out first and tried to run to Roman, saying, oh, Ro, you came. And Althea's arm darted out and grabbed hers, twisting it behind her back, and had her silver, laced zip-tied on the floor. Caleb says, fuck, she's fast, and Roman nods with a proud smile. Anna was next. She didn't resist. She resorted to tears. Same, zip-tied and done. Althea said, and then there was one. Come out, wherever you are. And Michael, act a fool, and I will drop you like a stone. He acted a fool. He charged, and she throat punched him. Hard, Roman says. That seems to be her go, to move, and the guys laugh. Auburn comes forth and says, Bennett, come forth. And sure enough, she called him forth. She can see Michael fighting the command. Good luck, buddy, Auburn said. Bennett, you will stand down. And he says, yes, Alpha, and they zip-tied him. And just like that, they are headed home. Roman says, You are so SXY when your dominant side shines. Makes me want to bend you and fuck you just to dominate you. You're so fucking hot, she said. 50 shades of you better not. I don't like pain. He laughed and said, not that kind of dominate. Where did you get so adept at alpha command? It's not an easy task, she says. My dad. He started teaching me from 5. I used to try it on him, and sometimes he would act like it worked, and I would yell for my mom to come look. I commanded Daddy, and she would clap and we would dance. My parents were silly, she giggled. He said, that's a great memory. It makes me happy to see you think of happier times. She said, I am happier now, you know, because of you. But I am happy because my mom and dad are together again. And they are happy, he said. Baby, last night you told me not to worry. We would be okay. What did you mean? She looked over and put her hand on her stomach. He said, are you? She said, I'm almost positive. I haven't tested yet. He pulls into a Walmart parking lot and jumps out and runs in the store. Caleb walks up and says, what is he doing? She just shrugs and Caleb walks back. They're back out on the road and he says, when we stop to eat, please? She grins great big and nods. They walked into the pack house and yells, we're pregnant. Everybody, we're pregnant. There was maybe 5 people up, and it struck her so funny. He linked Caleb immediately, and before I knew it, everyone stood there yelling and clapping and crying. She felt so loved. It's a wonderful feeling. We got up and dressed, and I grabbed the DVD to play for the pack and Kathy's birthday present. I tripped on down the stairs and headed to the kitchen to catch Kathy. I didn't want her to be embarrassed about getting a gift. It's not much. A necklace with her birthstone. I put it on her and took her hand, and we were talking and catching up when she stopped dead in her tracks. Caleb flew past me and swooped her up and ran for his room. Roman said, well, that must be the caramel cotton candy smell. And he laughed. And everyone who didn't show up last night now knows we are pregnant. Aunt Dee came and sat beside me, and she says, come to the clinic after breakfast, and we will do an ultrasound. Then you can do one for me. And she squealed and shouted, I'm going to be a cousin. Our life is on its way. They are in the clinic and Dee is setting the wand down on my abdomen. Roman squeezes my hand and looks green. She pushes down and moves the wand around and says they're pointing, and then she says, oh, and there. She wiggles the wand, looking. Then she says, oh, goddess. And there, 3 little beans. And Roman runs to the bathroom and throws up. It was great. 3 pups. Damn. When Dee hopped up on table, she said, don't do that to me. And we all laughed. She only has 1 baby. She's 13 weeks, but Althea is only 8. They were all in the conference room. Dylan said, that DVD was some funny crap. But what the fuck happened to my sister? Althea said, she got caught in Hurricane Fuckma Sideways, and they all that was funny crap too. Roman says they're bringing her up so we can hear her out and determine her fate. He pulled Althea into his lap and said, please stay. I need to be calm. And she just snuggled into him. Sydney was brought in and chained to a chair. She rolled her eyes and said, Ro, why are you doing this? You know I love you. Auburn burst forth and said, enough. His name is Roman, and you only ever refer to him as Alpha. Now you will tell us why you betrayed our pack. Sydney shivered and said, I met a man. He offered me money, and since you made my parents stop paying for my things, I needed it. The night I escaped, he took me to Golden Moon. And she shrugs, like and no big deal, and Roman roared, you betrayed your family. You abused your family, and then betrayed this pack for money to get your fucking nails done. Fuck this, let's vote. Neil, banished. John, banished. Dee, banished. It went around the table and was unanimous. Banishment. Althea, what say you? She says, banished. Execution would have been my vote.
Chapter 27, Epilogue.
Sydney was sent to live in no man's land, and she actually stays in touch with Mariah. Althea guessed they really were friends. Caleb is such a great guy, and the inner circle will never understand how he got stuck with such a sister. But Dylan is a great guy and well, Sydney. Michael and Anna were sentenced to death and Roman executed them. Peace has reigned supreme the last 6.5 months. Dedra and Neil have a beautiful baby boy named Liam, and everyone loves him. They moved into the house in town, and the shop is doing good. Caleb and Kathy mated and marked each other on her birthday. When you know, Althea has been struggling with her magic. Dee says it's because the triplets are throwing their power on her, and it causes surges. But Roman doesn't mind that much. He says it's comedic relief, especially when she sneezed and changed the Collins boy into a goat and Dee couldn't break the spell. Kid was a goat for 24 hours, and now he avoids the Luna like the plague. She apologized, but sometimes that isn't enough. Althea and Roman are at the infirmary. She's been in labor nearly 5 hours and getting cranky. Roman leans over her and says, "You want some ice chips, baby?" She said, "No, I want to sleep." "Do you think they will knock me out and wake me when it's over?" He laughed and said no. Dee walked in and said, "It's nearly time to push. It will go fast then." Althea was able to doze a little bit, but the contractions were so much stronger, and she asked Roman to get Dee. Dee checked her and said next contraction, and so it went for 3 more hours. And then they were parents. They had Alexander, Andrew, and Amber. Roman was over the moon. The boys both weighed 7 pounds even, and Amber weighed 6 pounds. She already has her daddy wrapped around her finger. The babies have been home for 3 days, and Roman and Althea brought them to lunch. They were enjoying eating and catching up with their friends. All of a sudden, a woman screeched, "What is happening?" And Roman jumped up looking for trouble. When you live long enough with threats, it is habit to jump to defend. At the screech, Dee looked over and saw all 7 babies in the nursery were floating in bubbles. She noticed Liam in a bubble too. She said, "Well, that's cute. Which one is doing it?" Althea said, "I'm not sure. I think it's Andrew. He is my quiet one and seems a little more advanced. I know not to disturb the bubble so they don't learn magic is bad. But 2 in the morning, it's hard not to." Aunt Dee laughed and said, "It gets better." And she laughed and said, "Promise." Roman came in and said, "Shall we take them back upstairs?" And Althea nodded. They got them settled, and he said, "They're going to be handfuls." And she laughed and said, "I hope not boulders thrown through houses handfuls." And Roman cracked up and said, "Goddess only knows."
The end.